Sup folks, welcome to the part 2, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, Chapter 6, Shorts 2. Frankenstein. Hey, Izuku, Fu said to get his attention as they were eating. Is something wrong, Fu? Normally Fu didn't talk while he ate, or did anything while he ate for that matter. He normally just ate like his life depended on it. No, I just had a weird thought, Fu said. So the meat I eat is used to replace my body when they rot or get ripped off, right? Right? Izuku wondered where he was going with this. So that means my body is made up of a bunch of different animal meats, Fu said. I'm not a zombie, I'm an animal, Frankenstein. Izuku paused. Huh. There was a long pause as the two continued eating. Frankenstein was the name of the doctor, not the monster. Izuku corrected him. Fu looked confused. Then what was the name of the monster? It doesn't have one, it's just called Frankenstein's monster, Izuku explained. Fu didn't seem to like that answer. That's really dumb. Izuku shrugged. I haven't read the book, so I can't really say. Just hold still. I'm almost done, Izuku said, holding up the last needle. The government had provided him with a special chemical that when inserted into Sanson's acid, would render it inert and change its color to blue. How long the chemical would last depended on how much of the chemical he gave her. The least he could give her would render her outer layer of goop inert, meaning she could still walk around and touch things, while also being able to swap that outer layer with the acid inside her, that would last about 10 hours. Or he could give her a full dose that would render all her acid inert. This would last about 24 hours. They also still had the suit just in case, but neither Sanson nor Izuku liked that option. The process of giving her the chemical was simple, however, it took some time. First, he would put on a special safety suit to protect him if he accidentally touched some of her acid. Then he would take a large needle and insert it into her, repeatedly until he was done. What made this process a lot harder was that Sanson didn't ever like staying still, a part of her was always bouncing around and moving. He understood why, of course, she was stuck in a jar for a year and she wanted to move as much as possible, and being made of slime also made it so she could move around in a way normal people couldn't. It still made it a pain to complete the process though. Izuku watched as the last patch of green turned blue. There we go. And we're done. Goo. Sanson jumped around, her entire body jiggling as she did so. Izuku smiled. Do you oof? He was interrupted as he was hit by a wet slap as Sanson burst onto his body. Cold. Izuku thought as Sanson deformed and wrapped around his body, covering his entire torso, then he felt her squeeze. It was like getting hugged by jello. San? What are you doing? Izuku asked her, using the shortened version of her name. Sanson reformed her head on Izuku's chest and gave him a bright, cheerful smile. Rwug. Rwug? Izuku tried to figure out what she was trying to say. Contrary to what they first thought, it would be possible for her to talk. Kind of. Sanson was capable of changing her shape a lot. She could potentially change or turn into anything she wanted, including altering the shape of her throat to change what noises she could make. By doing this, presumably, she could one day speak like a somewhat normal person. That would take a long time though. She would have to master both her shape-shifting ability and her speaking ability. Right now she could kind of string broken words and incomplete sentences. Her words were distorted by her slimy throat, making them even harder to make out. Rwug? Rug? No, there's no rugs in here. Oh, a hug. Izuku realized. You meant hug, right? Sanson's smile grew even wider and nodded, her slimy hug grew even tighter. She seemed ecstatic, like this was the best day of her life. She really likes hugs. Wait. She never hugged me before. Or anyone until now. Izuku started thinking, and then he remembered. Before this she was made entirely of corrosive acid. If she touched anyone, that could result in serious injury or death. Meaning, she probably had never been hugged, never been held, and never been touched. "San," Izuku called to her. "Let's go get everyone, and give them the biggest group hug we can." "Yeah." She smiled brightly. TV time. Izuku walked into the living room and saw a peculiar sight. Sanson was in front of the TV trying to replicate what the characters were doing on screen, with her stretchy limbs. The remote for the TV encased inside her torso. Kiba had her head through the ceiling and was flailing around while she stuck in the ceiling. Izuku sighed. "San, can you get your sister out of the ceiling?" Sanson nodded, her head moving like a bobblehead. She extended her arm, grabbing Kiba's foot, before pulling her out of the ceiling, letting her fall onto the couch. "It's a good thing no one lives in the house upstairs," Izuku thought. "Aha! Finally, I have been released. Now to enact my vengeance." Kiba lunged for the remote inside of Sanson. In response, the gooey girl increased the size of her legs, stretching her body up to the ceiling and causing Kiba to miss, crashing into the floor. Curses! Kiba was ready to lunge again, but Izuku stepped in. Wait! Izuku got in between the two of them. "What have I said about fighting? This isn't a fight," Kiba protested. "A fight involves two people bringing harm upon each other until one is no longer capable of standing. Seeing as Sanson is incapable of being harmed, one cannot truly fight her." Izuku sighed. "Well, you're technically not wrong. Still, no punching or kicking or lunging or any type of attacking in the house." Izuku pointed to the hole in the ceiling. "But she has been hogging the television. I am currently not watching my favorite anime so she can watch the 10,000th Avengers movie," Kiba protested. Izuku understood what happened now. Kiba must have been trying to get the remote, and Sanson stretched her arm to the ceiling with the remote. Kiba tried to jump up to get it, and missed, which ended up with her head getting stuck in the ceiling. He looked at the TV and the 567 Avengers movie, Avengers vs. the Fantastic Four. The two of them had rather different tastes in what they liked to watch. Most of the kids did. Eri liked watching slice-of-life anime, comedies, and other light-hearted feel-good types of shows and movies. And hated things with lots of violence or negativity. Liked basically anything, but her favorites were comedies and mysteries. Fu only really enjoyed in-depth character dramas, and only the really good ones too. He also tended to nitpick any movie he watched, even the ones he enjoyed. Kiba liked violent action shows, things that Izuku probably shouldn't be letting her watch, but considering she survived on the street for so long, she would probably be fine watching this. She was also particularly fond of anime, due to its overdramatic tendencies. Sanson loved watching with lots of action, particularly superhero movies and shows. She especially loved characters that could stretch like herself. Izuku thought about how to handle this problem. Should I do a TV schedule? No, we're going to move soon and they'll probably have more TV to use for themselves, so there's no sense in doing that. Alright, you two should handle things like big girls. If both of you want to watch TV, then you have to find a show you'll watch together, Izuku said. But the shows she watches are very different from the ones I watch, Kiba pointed out. No matter how different people's tastes are, you can probably find something they both like if you look hard enough, Izuku told them. And you might find something you like that you didn't think you would. Kiba seemed unconvinced but nodded anyway. Sanson agreed with that smile she always had on. It's like she was always happy no matter where she was. Although I would probably be happy to be anywhere after being in a drawer for a year, Izuku thought. I'm going to go make dinner. If I see you two arguing about this again, I'll take away points. The two's eyes widened in fear. They nodded and immediately got onto the couch. Sanson took the remote out of her chest, as the two surfed the endless content of the streaming services. A few hours later, Izuku walked into the living room, ready to tell the two dinner was ready. When he saw a familiar sight. The two of them were glued to the screen. Sanson wrapped around Kiba as they watched One Piece. Ah, good. I love that show. And even better, By the time they catch up to the newer episodes, they'll be adults. Izuku thought happily. Do it for them. Izuku was sitting at his desk, hunched over and flipping through a book with one hand while lifting a small dumbbell with the other. Today his mother was home and had offered to watch the kids. Meaning he had taken the day to do some self-improvement. A lot of self-improvement. Since he was going to be taking care of a lot of children, there were a lot of things he had to do. Firstly, he studied a lot of medical books. If he needed to care for kids, then making sure to keep them healthy, especially in case of an emergency. He also did a lot of studying on quirk counseling and quirk theory. Part of his contract required him to get his quirk counseling license sometime within a year. These two subjects were actually really easy for Izuku, as a lot of it was just learning how quirks worked and how they affected the users, something that Izuku already studied beforehand. He was also studying psychology. He wanted to understand the minds of the kids he was taking care of, so he could help them better. They were also teaching books so he could properly provide an education for them. The contract said that how they were educated was up to his discretion and he wanted to do it personally. He felt it would make them more comfortable. Oh, and then there was cooking. The kids might get tired of eating from the wide, but still limited selection of what Izuku could make, so he needed to learn how to make more food. He was also learning how to improve his cooking and how to find the best ingredients because these kids deserve the best. Lastly, he was also looking at biology. Looking at the biology in people with quirks that didn't majorly alter their bodies might help him figure out what to do with kids whose quirks do majorly alter their bodies. And while he was doing all that, he also decided to improve his body. He was going to need all the strength, speed, and especially stamina to keep up with everyone. I feel exhausted. Izuku thought. Maybe I should stop. No. I need to keep working. To give them a better future. He looked at the clock. It was 7 o'clock at night. He started at 6. Meaning he'd been working and studying for 13 hours. Ah crap. I need to plan out next week. Their education, their quirk training, what are we going to do for fun, what am I going to cook? Izuku quickly put away all of his books and his weights and took out a bunch of papers with different templates on them. One was for planning their activities, the other was to list any supplies they might need, and the last was a meal planner in which Izuku would plan what was going to be cooked and what he needed to cook them. He needed these planners because otherwise, he would have to make these plans on the spot. And making plans that took into account the different personalities, tastes, and desires of 6 kids took time. Of course, he didn't need to strictly stick to these plans, they were more of a guideline. One that he would follow if nothing else came up. It took him another 2 hours to finish. Izuku sat back in his chair. He was so tired. I have to keep working. Izuku's eyes were closing. I have to. The green-haired boy fell into a deep sleep. Minutes later, walked into the room. Izuku, can we? She stopped when she saw Izuku was asleep. She ran out of the room and into the living room. Guys. Izuku fell asleep at his desk again. Said. Did he overwork again? Eri asked in concern. He really must learn to stop doing that, Kiba said, getting up off the couch. He's doing it for us, Fu said. He really wants us to be happy. I know that. Kiba stopped her act, for a moment. I just wished he took better care of himself. Yee. Sanson agreed. Well, I can't argue with that, Fu said. They all got up and walked into Izuku's room. Sanson grew in size, becoming as tall as the room itself. Then she gently lifted Izuku off of his seat and moved him onto the bed. Then the Goo girl climbed into bed next to him, snuggling up into his side. You're going to bed, so soon, Sanson? Asked. We can still have a goody time. That was terrible. Kiba groaned. You're saying my puns suck. Snickered. Why are you like this? Fu asked. Oh, not you too. You're just jealous that I'm better at puns than you, lever, zombie. Claffed, covering her mouth so Izuku didn't wake up. I think they're funny, Eri admitted. Fu rolled his eyes. We should probably go to sleep now. I'll get the plastic sheet. Kiba, due to her immense strength, couldn't sleep next to anyone because she would accidentally squeeze them to death. Fu was the exception to this because he couldn't feel pain and could regenerate. However, they needed to put a plastic sheet wherever they slept because otherwise, Fu's blood would get everywhere. And Eri crawled into bed, with Izuku as they normally did. Sansan wrapped her arm around all three of them, before extending her other arm over to the light switch, and shutting it off. Notebooks. Fu looked through Izuku's room, taking a bunch of his figures and posters and putting them into boxes. They had been packing up slowly over the past week, seeing as their new home wouldn't be ready for a while, they still had plenty of time. Today Fu had been tasked with picking up Izuku's hero merch. Seeing as he couldn't get tired, he was seen as the right person for the job. I knew Izuku had a lot of hero stuff, but now that I'm cleaning it I'm starting to think he bought all the hero stuff in existence, he thought. After several minutes of taking down Izuku's stuff, he came to the closet. Wonder how much stuff is in here? Fu thought. He opened the closet, and to his surprise, there was no hero merch. Rather, a pile of notebooks, with the words, Hero Analysis for the Future. Hero Analysis? What does analysis mean? Fu wondered. He was a smart kid, and he had read through some of a dictionary, but of course, there were still plenty of words he was unfamiliar with. He opened up the notebooks and started reading, and reading, and reading. Inside the notebooks were tons, and tons of notes about quirks. Theories, observations, possible uses. Fu kept on reading for about an hour, intrigued by the content of the notebooks. Izuku wrote all this. Why? I mean, it's really cool, but why did he write this? It's mostly heroes, so did Izuku want to be a hero? Fu asked. He was flipping through the last few pages when he saw something odd. All the notes were incomplete, and there were darkened spots littered across the pages like they had been wet by rain or tears. And the last sentence written in the notebook said, I can't keep doing this, it hurts too much every time I look at these things, it hurts, I can't be a hero. Kaken's right, I'm just a useless, quirkless Deku. I'm putting these notebooks away, one day I'll throw them out, I don't even know why I am writing this. This was very alarming to Fu. For one, this proved that Izuku wanted to be a hero at one point, but it seemed like he thought that he couldn't for some reason. What's worse is that Izuku called himself useless, which Fu knew wasn't true and was a very harsh thing to call yourself, and apparently, someone called Kaken was calling him this. This actually made Fu kinda mad. He probably would have been more upset if it weren't for the whole muted emotions thing. And then there was that word, quirkless. Now, Fu had never seen or heard this word before, but it wasn't hard to figure out. Homeless people had no homes. Penniless people had no money. So quirkless people must not have quirks. But that was impossible. At least to Fu. He had never seen a single person without a quirk. He had never even heard of someone without a quirk before. It'd like being born without a head. Although now that he thought about, some people were probably born without a head due to their quirk. Fu kept thinking about it. But what if there was a quirk that could take away quirks? That probably exists, and if it happened to Izuku, then he wouldn't have a quirk. And it would explain why Izuku doesn't want to talk about his quirk. Now everything was starting to make sense. Why he'd never seen Izuku use his quirk, why Izuku never talked about his quirk. It's because it was taken away from him. Before Fu could continue his train of thought, the door opened up. Fu, what's taking you so long? Kiba walked in, followed by Eri and Sansan. We came to check on you, said. Are those Izuku's notebooks? Eri asked. Yeah, I think I finally figured out the secret behind Izuku's quirk, Fu said. One explanation later. Izuku had his quirk stolen? Gasped. I think so, Fu said, and there is some friend called Kaken who calls Izuku such degrading things? Kiba fumed. Even worse, It looks like Izuku believes it. Fu crossed his arms, but that's not true. Izuku's great. Protested. Gu. Sanson agreed with her. She didn't fully understand, but she knew that something bad was happening to Izuku and she didn't like that. Eri stayed silent as the other kids voiced their outrage. Izuku had told her about him being quirkless and that he had been picked on for it, back when he was trying to get her to completely open up to him. He had also instructed her not to tell the rest of the children. He hadn't told her why, but to be fair, she didn't ask. And now they were finding out by themselves. They weren't completely right, but they seemed to be catching on and she didn't know what to do about it. So what do we do? K asked. Do about what? Their heads all spun towards the doorway, and they saw Izuku standing there. He saw them looking at his notebooks and immediately got embarrassed. Oh, why you found those? Izuku stuttered, looking away in an attempt to hide his red face. I guess I forgot to throw those out. I just stopped getting in the habit of writing in those. Why would you want to throw these out? Fu asked, his face conveying his slight dissatisfaction. They. Izuku didn't know how to say it. They're not important anymore. Why? Fu asked. Well, I wrote them back when I still wanted to be a pro hero, Izuku explained. Now I don't need them anymore. You wanted to be a pro hero? Kiba asked. Finally getting some information on her caretaker. Yes. Izuku winced. It still hurt to talk about. Why did you stop wanting to be one? Kiba asked him. Izuku opened his mouth, but nothing came out, as his mind searched for something to say. But he found nothing. He didn't like the idea of lying to these kids, but he couldn't tell them the truth either. If he said it's because he couldn't, then they would ask why, then he would have to bring up his quirklessness. And he really didn't want to do that. His quirklessness is what got him bullied in school, what kept him from making friends, what made people look at him with disgust. The hopeful part of his brain told him that the kids would accept him, that everything would be the same. But the fearful, paranoid part of his brain made him worried that they would reject him. The thought of receiving those same mocking, disgusted glances from these kids. He wouldn't be able to take that. It's not impotent, Izuku said, nearly shouting, alarming the kids who rarely ever heard him raise his voice. It's in the past, it doesn't matter. The kids looked at Izuku's face. He was sweating, and his breathing had picked up a little. And his eyes, they seemed scared. There was a long pause. I'm sorry. Izuku composed himself, ready to put on his I'm fine act. Let's just go. And is it because someone took your quirk? Kiba asked. Izuku froze. Fu gave her a pointed look. He wanted to find out more as well, but it was clear that this was painful to talk about. There was another pause, this one even longer than the last one. Izuku gave them a pained expression. He couldn't hide it anymore. It was now or never. No one stole my quirk. I was I was born without a quirk. All the kids' eyes widened, with the exception of Eri, who looked ashamed. But everyone has a quirk, said. Not everyone. Izuku corrected her. There is a very small amount of people in the world without a quirk. Most of them are old, but there is an even smaller amount of people my age without a quirk. So you just never had a quirk? Fu asked. Izuku nodded, looking at the floor. Everyone stayed silent. Izuku grit his teeth in anticipation. He hadn't felt so fearful of a response since he asked All Might if he could be a hero. And the answer to that question nearly broke him. After a while, Kiba eventually asked. Why didn't you tell us? I was afraid of what would happen if I told you. Izuku admitted. When people find out I'm quirkless they don't treat me the same. They laugh at me, they hate me. I was scared that if you found out you wouldn't want to be with me anymore. There was another pause. This time a very short pause. That's stupid. Kiba shouted, alarming everyone. Listen here, Caretaker. Your lack of quirk matters not to us. And anyone who would treat such a kind person poorly is an enemy of the great Kiba. You took me and my minion in. You gave us food and a home when no one else would. And you have done so to the rest of my siblings. You are our caretaker. And we will forever respect you. Ye. Sanson agreed. We'd never want to leave you, Izuku, Fu said. Our lives have gotten a lot better since we met you, and not having a quirk doesn't really change that. You're just as great without a quirk as you are with one, said. Eri gave him a determined nod. Izuku felt joy and relief fill him. They hadn't rejected him. Finally, someone hadn't rejected him. He fell to his knees and tears fell from his eyes. It felt like a weight had been lifted from his back. Sensing this was the time for a hug, Sanson extended her arms, encompassing Izuku and all the kids before bringing them all together in a tight embrace. Thank you. Izuku sobbed. Thank you all. Time for the author's notes. Okay, let me address a few things. Sanson essentially sounds like an inkling trying to speak English or technically Japanese. For anyone wondering when I'm going to slow down with the adoptions. It's soon. I'm getting together a big enough cast to do a lot of stuff with. Once they get into the new house I'll probably slow down with the adoptions. Not stop. Slow down. Now lastly let's talk about getting season to the story. Getting season to the story is not going to be easy. I don't think I explained the criteria correctly. The character has to have a quirk that is powerful, dangerous, and hard to control. However, it can't be so powerful, dangerous, and out of control that it poses a major hazard to everyone else. For example, if I made a character whose quirk makes them radioactive, then they would kill everyone. Even if you gave them a containment suit, if that suit rips, everyone dies of radiation poisoning. If X's visor falls off all she has to do is close her eyes. And even if she looks at someone they're not dead, just frozen for a day. Let's look at some examples of canon characters who do and don't fit the criteria. Shinso does not fit the criteria. His quirk is controllable and is not inherently dangerous. Therefore he does not fit. Tamura Shigaraki. I think he still has to have all 5 fingers on something in order to use his quirk, and if that's still the case, then yes he would fit. He would have to wear special gloves but he would fit. Toga Himiko does not fit. This will probably be surprising to a lot of people but let me explain. Toga's quirk does not require her to drink blood to survive. Toga could go the rest of her life without drinking blood and she would not die. Her quirk gave her a fascination with blood but it's not what caused her to become the way she is now. She probably could have turned out fine if she got proper quirk consoling and support from her family, but her family sucked, so she didn't get any of that and was basically forced to subdue herself until she went insane. That's not all her quirk's fault, it's mostly just her shitty parents. Kiba has to drink blood or she will die. That is the key difference between the two. Dabi and Aoyama do not fit. Self-harming quirks don't fit the criteria. Only quirks that are hard to control and cause some sort of damage to others. Like I said, meeting the criteria is hard. I've had to toss out many ideas because they don't meet the criteria, so it's gonna be hard to get an OC into the story. Not impossible. Just hard. Anyway, that's it for now. Please review and have a nice day. Chapter 7, Something Afoot. Okay, so this chapter will be very off at first. It will seem out of nowhere and nonsensical. That's on purpose, it's supposed to be off. You'll see what's going on as the chapter continues. Izuku smiled happily as he watched his children eat his food with such glee. It filled him with joy to see them all so happy eating what he made. There was the child he had saved from a villain. Her happy-go-lucky personality, love of puns, and sheer contagious happy energy made her a joy to be around. Even if some of her puns could be a bit cringy. Fu, his only son, was a bit boring, but he was always very mindful of his siblings and father. He was smart, curious, and took after Izuku's habit of taking down notes of people's quirks. His quirk may have made him a bit gross at times, but that wasn't his fault and no one here begrudged him for it. Kiba was his most troublesome daughter, as her egotistical and silly personality, combined with her immense strength, caused her to get into trouble way more often than the other children. But she always meant well and was rather endearing despite her ego, making it hard to stay mad at her forever. Sansan can't really eat anything, so she was just in front of the TV. This time she was watching a hero fight on the news, eagerly trying to recreate the moves she saw on screen. It was really cute. Even if he was always nervous she would break something. Then there were his two biological daughters, Eri and Izumi. Izumi had light pink hair and purple eyes and was about 6 years old. The youngest out of all Izuku's kids. She did get Izuku's freckles though, other than that she looked really nothing like him. He shook his head. He felt like something was wrong for some reason. However, he didn't have time to think about that as Eri and Izumi suddenly ran into his legs. He looked down and saw the two smiling brightly at him. "Carry us." Izumi giggled. "Please." Eri smiled brightly at him. Izuku was glad that he had started working out, as he was able to more easily pick up the two small children. "Are you too excited to move soon?" he asked the two of them. He was a bit nervous about how the two of them would feel about the move. After all, these two had spent their entire lives here. However, his fears were realized as the two of them nodded eagerly. "How big is it gonna be? Are we gonna have a pool? Is our room gonna be big?" Izumi seemed extremely excited. Her excited questions were stopped by a tired yawn coming from her mouth. Izuku chuckled. "It's going to be very big. And we'll have lots of rooms." Izumi was bursting with excitement. And Eri seemed happy as well. "Are you two gonna miss this place though? We have spent a while here?" Izuku asked. "Nope." Izumi gave him a blank stare and paused for a moment. Oh yeah. I'm really sad about that." Eri thought about the question. She had spent all of her life here and yet she felt no real attachment. She remembered being here all her life. But when she tried to remember details about this place past a certain point, it got hard. Eri clutched her head in pain. "Eri, are you okay?" Izuku asked, looking at her with concern. "Why yes," Eri said as the headache alleviated. Izumi was also concerned, but she seemed more nervous than concerned. Izumi quickly shifted moods however and gave a bright smile to Izuku. "Daddy, we got all of the points, remember? You promised you would take us to the amusement park." "Of course I remember. I would never forget all the hard work you guys did." Izuku looked at them all, pride and happiness bursting from his eyes. "I'm so proud you all managed to get so many points before we even moved out." "Ah. Of course, we did. The great Kiba and her siblings will surpass any and all expectations." Kiba laughed proudly. "Weren't you the only person to lose points?" Fu reminded her, making her stop and hang her head in shame of that memory. "And we also got one sibling, so that probably helped." "Jayu," Sansan added, raising her fist high into the air. "We all worked super hard. I can even read books all by myself." Puffed out her chest proudly, her snakes looking particularly smug. "I didn't know snakes could look smug," Izumi thought, giving a small yawn. "My family is weird. But they're mine. All mine. You've been putting in a lot of effort to Eri." Izuku patted Eri's head. "One day you have full control over your quirk." Eri wanted to be confident that, but for some reason, she wasn't. And she couldn't quite understand why. She didn't normally doubt herself, but for some reason, she felt like she did. Ah. The headache was back again. Eri pushed her head into Izuku's chest. Izuku was now really concerned. "Eri, are you feeling okay today? My hurt a little." "It's gone," Eri said. "Are you sick, sis?" Izumi asked her. "Eri's sick?" Immediately got up and ran over to Izuku. "If Eri's sick then we should probably go another day," Fu suggested. Sansa nodded very intensely in agreement. Kiba didn't say anything. She really wanted to go to the amusement park, but if Eri was sick it would be more important for them to stay home until she was better. "I'm fine." Eri initiated. She didn't want the trip delayed because of her. She would ask them to go without her, but she knew that they would never do that. Izuku felt her forehead. No fever. He thought real hard about this. He could delay it, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. He looked at the kids. They would all be really disappointed though, and he hated the idea of disappointing them. As he looked over them his eyes landed on Izumi. And he noticed something. Her eyes had bags. Very noticeable bags. He didn't know how he didn't see them before. "Izumi, did you sleep last night?" Izuku asked her, giving her a stern look. Her eyes widened in panic and realization, and she nervously looked for an answer. I She does seem kinda tired," Fu noted. I am not." Izumi glared at the zombie boy. However, her point was rendered moot by another yawn coming out of her mouth. Izuku gave her a stern look. "Izumi, I told everyone to go to sleep early last night. I'm sorry, Daddy." Izumi gave him an over-dramatic teary-eyed look, that would only work on a sap. Fortunately, Izuku was very much a sap and his stern look faded away almost instantly. "Well, I need to postpone the trip to tomorrow anyway." "But I'm fine." Eri protested. Her eyes teared up a little. "Why am I crying? I don't cry a lot, but it feels like Another headache pulsed through Eri's head. She tried not to let it show, but it was hard for her not to wince in pain, and in the end, Izuku noticed. "You and Izumi are going to bed. Your health is more important than the trip." Izuku looked to the other children. "Right? Yeah. Eri is important." Nodded. Sanson held up a flashcard saying in crude print, "Get well, Eri. Rest, dear sister. I have infinite patience, and hey, don't laugh." Kiba shouted to Fu, who was trying and failing not to laugh at her, saying she had infinite patience. "We'll go once the headaches stop," Izuku said. "Hopefully they'll stop later today so we can go tomorrow. And if you still feel them tomorrow then we'll see a doctor." Eri nodded. "I'm sorry." "It's okay, sis. I'll stay with you." Izumi gave Eri a kind smile and held her hand, firmly. Eri smiled at her sister and Izuku walked to the bedroom. Once Izuku got in there he laid the two of them down on his bed and tucked them in. "You two get some rest, I'll be right over there reading and doing some exercise." Izuku was about to move away but Izumi grabbed his shirt. "You're not gonna stay?" Izumi asked him, panic lays within her voice. "I'm just gonna be right there," Izuku said, pointing to the desk that was literally 5 feet away. Izumi continued to give him that teary-eyed, begging look. Izuku sighed. "I need to keep working and studying so that way I can take care of you guys the best I can." Izumi's expression faltered for a second. He's always thinking about his kids. He's perfect? Izumi thought. However, it didn't take long for her expression to go back the same, teary-eyed one, begging for him to lay down with them. "Daddy." Eri looked away slightly. I want you to sleep with us too." Izuku looked at the two of them, and then back to the books. And then he sighed. "Let me just get a book to read and I'll lay down," Izuku said, coming up with a compromise. "Thank you, Daddy." Izumi grinned, staring at Izuku with a look of pure admiration. Izuku tussled her hair, making her giggle. She was a handful, but any trouble she caused was more than worth it to see her smile. He grabbed a book labeled, Advanced Quirk Counseling, and then prepared to lay down. "Can I be in the middle?" Izumi asked, moving over so Izuku could be on the side. "I wanna hug Big Sis too." Izuku looked at Eri, who in response hugged Izumi and gave Izuku a nod saying he was okay with it. He crawled into bed and felt Izumi immediately pull him in closer. Latching on to both him and Eri and holding them tight. Izumi was in paradise. Sleeping next to her father and her slightly older sister, getting hugged by that sister as her father gently strokes both their heads. It was everything she could ever want. Everything she had dreamed of. Sniff. Iri opened her eyes and Izuku tore his attention from his book and turned to Izumi. Tears started leaking from her eyes and Izumi started crying into Izuku and Iri's arms. Daddy? Big sis. You love me, right? Izumi asked tearfully. Right. Of course we do, Izuku said instantly. Yes, Iri said almost as fast, hugging her sister a bit closer to her. We love our siblings more than anything else in the world, Izuku said, soothingly, rubbing the back of her head. Izumi leaned into their embraces. It was real. It was all here. They loved her. They cared for her. They wanted her here. Her eyes started to close. She was really tired. After all, she had been busy all of last night. Her eyes closed, and she fell asleep. Meanwhile, with the other kids, Fu, Kiba, and Sansan were playing Superhero Bash together on the couch, or rather Kiba was fighting a Fu and crew teamed up to fight against her, while Sansan just ran around throwing random attacks and offstaging herself because she didn't really know how to play the game. I grabbed her. Fu, use your ultimate. Shouted. Damn death arms and his absurd grab range. Kiba growled as she button mashed to try and escape. Fu activated his ultimate attack with Hawks, hitting both Edge-shot and death arms. After a short cinematic, both characters were sent flying off screen. Curses! Kiba shouted, throwing her controller. The controller flew out and hit one of the boxes, knocking it over and breaking the controller. Kiba's eyes widened in panic. Oh no, oh no, oh no. She ran over to the fallen box and picked up the broken controller. Dada's gonna be so mad. Kiba dropped her usual persona. For the controller or for the pictures? Fu asked. Pictures? Kiba looked up and saw the box had opened up and the picture frames had spilled out. Kiba quickly picked up the box and started putting back the frames into the box. Fu paused the game and went over to help and started looking at the pictures, when he noticed something odd, and picked up a certain picture. What are you doing? We need to put these away. Kiba snatched the picture. Wait, look at that picture, Fu said. Kiba looked at the picture. It was a picture they had all taken after they got Sansan. Their first group hug. Sansan was wrapped around all of them like a gooey rubber band while Izuku held up the camera trying to get the best shot. However, something was off. Izumi wasn't in it. Kiba looked at the picture in confusion. She remembered Izumi being in that photo. So why wasn't she actually in it? Fu was equally confused. Why? Kiba suddenly dropped the picture, as a massive headache hit her like a truck. Kiba Fu stopped, as he suddenly felt strange. Something was happening in his head. Kiba and Sansan immediately got off the couch and ran towards the vampire girl in pain. Goo. Sansan moved around Kiba, trying to see what was hurting her. Meanwhile, in their minds, something changed. Their memories of taking the picture now matched up with the picture itself. Kiba's headache stopped and the girl groaned in pain. What was that? Izumi was never in that picture. Fu realized. You remember it now too? Kiba gave him a pointed look. How is it you didn't suffer from a headache like I did? Probably because I can't feel pain. Fu guessed. He put his thumb to his lips and got into a thinking stance. Izumi wasn't in that picture. So why did we remember her being in it? Also, why did Kiba have a huge headache before she could remember it right? What are you talking about? Ka asked, totally confused. You recall our first group embrace when Sansan first arrived, correct? Kiba asked while she picked up the photo. Yeah, it was great. It was like being covered in jelly. Chirped. Sansan was evidently happy to hear this and wrapped her in a hug, making the two of them giggle. And you remember Izumi being in the picture, right? Kiba asked her. Replied. Well, she's not. Kiba revealed the picture, allowing both Ken and Sansan to get a good look. The two of them looked confused for a while. Before K suddenly got the same headache Kiba did. Sansan just blankly stared at the photo for half a minute, before looking confused again. After about the same amount of time K's headache stopped. What? Huh? Why? K was so confused. Something's definitely wrong, Fu said. Did your memory change too? Asked Sansen. The good girl nodded. But she didn't get a headache either. I guess it doesn't happen to people who can't feel pain, Fu summarized. But for people who can, they get headaches whenever their memories ... wait ... eerie. Eerie? Kiba and K said at the same time, as all three girls gave him a confused look. Eerie was getting a lot of headaches today, remember? Fu reminded them. Oh right. Do you think that had something to do with this? Kiba asked. Probably, Fu said. We should ask her when she wakes up. I can't wait that long. Kiba objected. There is something afoot in our home. Our minds are under attack. We cannot waste a single second. If we wake up Eerie, Izuku's gonna give you a disappointed look, told her. Never mind, we shall wait, Kiba said almost instantly. In the meantime, let us see what clues we can find on our own, shall we? Yeah. Fu agreed. Maybe we should look at more pictures. A few hours later, Izuku walked out of his room as quietly as he could. Not wanting to wake either of his daughters up, he looked at his watch. It's going to get late. It's a shame we couldn't go to the park today. Maybe I should go make some special snacks for them. I'll need to go to the supermarket to get the ingredients though. As Izuku walked into the living room, he saw that of the picture frames he had packed up had been taken out of the box and were being looked at by the other kids. What are you doing? Izuku asked them. Izuku ran up to him holding a picture. Izuku looked at the picture. It was a picture that he, Izumi, Eerie, and K had taken when they sold food in the park. Except Izumi wasn't in it. What? Izuku took the picture from K. But ... Izumi was in this, I remember. A headache suddenly hit Izuku, as his memory repaired itself. Look at this too. Kiba brought out a few more photos that Izumi was mysteriously absent from. The pain in Izuku's head increased, as his memory rearranged itself to make sense of what he was seeing. What's going on? Izuku groaned, clutching his head. I don't know, Fu said. But I think something may be wrong with our memories. Some dastardly villain might be controlling our minds. Kiba suggested. Izuku wasn't sure about that, but it was clear something was wrong. And that it probably involved a quirk. What's strange to Izuku is that none of the other kids seemed to be missing from photos they should be in. Just Izumi. And he didn't know why that was. For a second, just a split second, he suspected Izumi herself may have something to do with this. However, he quickly dismissed that thought. Izumi was his daughter. There is no way she would do anything bad to them. Besides, she was quirkless. Just like he was. There was no way she could have done this. He pulled out his phone and quickly called the police. Hello, this is the police, what is your emergency? The person on the other end said. Yes, this is Midoriya Izuku. I think me and my family are under the effect of some kind of mental quirk. Izuku said. We started looking at pictures and found that one of our family members. Wait, you said your name was Midoriya Izuku? The person on the other end said. Yes, Izuku confirmed. Okay, give me a second. The person said. Suddenly the phone bleeped. And then after a few seconds, a new and very familiar voice picked up. Hey there Izuku, old buddy, what's up? Asked the voice of Nami. Nami? Izuku asked in confusion. Then he remembered, anything that might concern the safety of the children was to be reported to the OPCC. Oh, sorry. I forgot I was supposed to report to your branch ... But are you the only person that works for the OPCC? I've never met anyone else who works there except you. Yeah, you see, after you took in Eerie, you found K so fast I didn't get a chance to leave the city and was the closest agent available. Same goes for the other kids. Now I just got promoted as the connection between you and the OPCC, so you're gonna be hearing a lot from me. The Iri incident? Izuku had no idea what she was talking about. Yeah. When you saved Iri from the Yakuza and then adopted her. Nami said in a confused tone, wondering why she had to remind him of this. Yakuza? Adoption? Iri's my biological daughter. What are? Izuku stopped. Wait. If our memories are being affected then another headache hit Izuku, this time much harder than the last one. But this time, instead of his memory being fixed, it just became foggy. What's going on? Iri's my daughter, right? My biological daughter? Izuku was even more confused. Biological Izuku, there is no way you've had sex with anyone at your current age, let alone when you were in grade school, Nami told him. What's sex? Izuku felt like he heard of that before, and part of him felt embarrassed by saying it. Izuku. Are you pranking me? You're pranking me, right? Nami asked him. And no. I think something's happened to our memories. We started looking at some pictures and we noticed Izumi wasn't there. Izuku got cut off. Izumi? Who the hell is Izumi? Nami asked. My other biological daughter. Iri's sister. Izuku answered. Okay, again. Izuku, you have no biological daughters and you've never taken in anyone named Izumi. Nami said. I'm sending some people over to you now. Would you mind describing whoever the hell this Izumi kid is? She's a ... She's got pink hair and purple eyes. Izuku was interrupted again. She had pink hair and purple eyes and you thought she was directly related to you? Nami deadpanned. Yeah, I think she gets it from her mom, Izuku said. And that is? Nami asked. I ... can't remember them, Izuku answered. Izuku could feel his head hurting again. Okay, Izuku. I want you to look up how babies are made, then think about if you really have any biological daughters. Nami said. One Google search later. Izuku's face was pale as he finished reading about it. What's worse is that as he had read it, the memories of learning about it came back to him. Meaning he had to learn about the birds and beast twice. I know I didn't do that with anyone. But that means that suddenly it hit Izuku. This headache wasn't nearly as long, but it hit Izuku like a bullet, causing him to pass out. His memories swirled and changed in his head. Hours later. Oh! Izuku groaned. He opened his eyes and saw Nami's deadpan face staring at him. You really couldn't wait until you got the bigger house? She asked him. Her deadpan broke and gave way into an amused smile. I really think you have some sort of secret quirk that attracts children. What? What are you then? It all came back to him. I don't have any biological daughters. No shit. Nami chuckled. Izuku looked around and saw he was still in his house, in the living room, on his couch. He saw a bunch of agents in his kitchen raiding his fridge. I'm guessing those are your friends? Izuku sighed. Yup. You're rich. You can take us raiding your fridge. Nami said, taking out one of the lollipops he had for the kids and sucking on it. I remember everything now, Izuku said. Yeah, turns out all your memories were altered by that girl, Nami said. We had our specialist fix your noggin, so you're welcome. That girl ... Izumi. Izuku realized. Izumi had never shown up until today and then suddenly all their memories included her. Yeah, that's not her real name, Nami informed him. Her real name Kyaku Amoyide. And as you can guess, she can alter memories. She's 6, coming up on 7, and she's actually not an orphan for once. She has 2 parents and an older sister. Okay. This was a lot to take in. A small child had broken into his house and changed not only his memory but the memory of his entire family except his mom, who was out at the time, and inserted herself into their lives. Then he remembered something. When they laid down and she started crying, begging for them to say they loved her and while clinging to them. Why ... did she do all this? Izuku had a bad feeling about what the girl's motivation might be. Oh, we don't know. Nami shrugged. When we came in, she absolutely lost her shit. She started crying and screaming hysterically, so much to the point where it scared the other children and some of my guys and me. It was really depressing to look at, too. Our guys have been trying to get her to talk to her for a while, but she's not cooperating. Think you can give us a hand? Izuku nodded and Nami led him to his mother's room, which had 2 guards in front of it. The guards moved aside and let the 2 of them in. Inside, sitting on his mother's bed, was Kyoku, sobbing into her hands. When she heard the door open, her head shot towards it. Once she saw Izuku, she immediately dashed towards him, hugging his legs. "Please don't get rid of me," she begged. "Please. I'm sorry I messed with your memory. I just wanted a family." Instantly Izuku kneeled down and hugged her, stunning the girl. "I'm not mad at you," Izuku said to her. "Just tell us everything." "Everything?" she asked. "Everything. Why you did this. How you did this, everything." Izuku told her, sounding both serious and affectionate. I. The girl paused, looking rather squeamish. "My family doesn't like me. Daddy always tells me to go away and gets angry when I don't, and mommy is always not there, in the head. Big sister hates me too. Most of the time they all just ignore me. When I got my quirk, I tried to make them love me. But my quirk can't change someone like that. They just remembered everything and punished me. Neglectful family, guess I'll have to get legal on the line." Nami sighed. Izuku would have been amazed that Nami actually sounded kind of professional, but his attention was focused purely on the girl. He had feared that her family was neglectful or abusive the minute Nami mentioned she had a family. Izuku could guess her motivation from here. "Then I saw you. And your family. I saw how much you loved them and cared for them, and I wanted it so bad." Kyoku sobbed. "So I erased my old family's memories. And then I changed Kiba's memories so she would leave the door unlocked at night, and I snuck in and changed your memories. So that's how she got in. She must have ambushed Kiba when we went to the park or something," Izuku speculated. "Well, you did kind of a bad job. I mean, they broke out of it pretty quickly." Nami criticized her. "It's not my fault. It takes me a long time to change that many memories. And I had to change Eri's whole past." Kyoku defended herself, pouting while flailing her arms. If it takes her a while, then she might have spent all night doing it. That would explain why she was so tired, Izuku thought. "But why did you change so many of Eri's memories?" Izuku asked her. Kyoku froze, and her face turned pale. When I use my quirk, I can look through memories. So when I went to change Eri's memories, I saw everything." Izuku paled as well and hugged the girl closer. "No child should have to see that. It was horrible." Kyoku sobbed. "I didn't want her to remember it, so I changed it." "Yeah, that's reasonable. Part of me wishes we didn't fix her memory, but we're complied to by contract, so yeah. But if you want to erase all that stuff from her noggin later, then that's up to you," Nami said. Izuku contemplated that, before quickly pushing it to the back of his mind. He could think about that later. Right now he had to worry about the girl in front of him. Eri had gone through so much. I wanted her to be happy," Kyoku admitted. "So I changed everything. But I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough time for everyone, so I rushed. That explains why we were able to realize it so quickly," Izuku muttered. "Why, yeah. You don't realize your memory change unless you see something that proves it," Kyoku explained. "So her quirk stays in effect until the victim witnesses and contradicts the false memories she creates. So if the photos hadn't been there, or if she had more time to alter our memories, then we might have never realized something was off," Izuku thought. "So that explains some things." "But why did you get rid of Izuku's memories of what sex is?" Nami asked. "Nami." Izuku moved to cover the girl's ears. "What?" If she got rid of your memory of sex, she probably already knows what sex is. She probably figured it out from looking at her parents' memories. Nami protested, crossing her arms and pouting like a child. Geez. Kyoku looked away, her face turning red from embarrassment. I wanted to be his real daughter, but I knew that I couldn't do that if he knew where babies came from, so I erased it. Ah. So you got greedy, and instead of settling for being an adopted kid, you went for the biological route, Nami said before getting lightly elbowed by Izuku, who glared at her fiercely. Now is not the time to criticize her, Izuku whispered, growled. Nami put her hands up defensively and backed away. Izuku looked back at Kyoku, who was crying fiercely. I'm sorry, I really wanted someone to love me. Kyoku cried. Izuku's heart ached and he pulled the girl into a tiger hug. I'm sorry. Kyoku froze for a second, before looking at Izuku with confusion. What? Why are you sorry? I'm sorry that you felt like you needed to make someone love you, Izuku explained. No child should have to feel that way. I'll give you all the love you want. So you don't have to do something like that even again. Kyoku's eyes were wide with shock. She knew he was nice, but she never would have expected him to be this nice. Once the shock dispersed, the only things left were tears. Tears for having finally found someone who loves her, tears for it having taken so long, tears for all the things she's been through, and tears for the fact that it was all over. And so she cried into his chest, while he lovingly patted her back. It's okay. Cry for as long as you need, Izuku told her. Meanwhile, Nami had been making some phone calls while this was all happening. She walked up to Izuku and tapped his shoulder, getting his attention. So I made some calls. We've sent some people to her parents' household. Right now we're starting a case against them for child neglect. During the duration of the case and following legal action, she'll be under the care of OPCC, and as per our contract, under your care. And when we are finished, assuming we win, which is basically guaranteed, she will be permanently removed for their custody and placed into yours. Nami explained. Izuku nodded, happy to hear that. However, there was one thing that confused him. You labeled her as an OPC that quickly? Well, it likely would have taken longer if it wasn't for her little display, Nami told him. She, a 6-year-old, used her quirk to make her parents forget about her and inserted herself into a whole new family while altering several other things in people's memories, and one girl's entire life, all within the span of one night. Imagine what she could do with more experience or more time. Izuku thought about what Nami said. Kyoku was very young and inexperienced, but she was still able to break into his house and mess with the minds of 6 people in a relatively short amount of time. Yuri's personality even changed due to her not remembering past traumas that haunted her. She could in theory change people's entire lives in an instant, or even change how they act and what they do. It was an extremely dangerous quirk if in the wrong hands. And therefore the government wanted to make sure it was in the right hands. Not that it mattered to him much. He would have probably tried to adopt her regardless of how powerful her quirk was. Author's notes. So to explain Kyoku's quirk, she can alter someone's memories completely so long as she touches your head. She can look through your memories, and change them in any way she wants. However, she does have to be thorough, because if there's a strong contradiction between the fake memory and something in the real world, then the victim will regain their old memories. It also takes her a long time to change someone's memories depending on how much she changes. If she just changes some minor details, it can take a minute or two, but if she changes large parts of a person's life, it can take an hour or so. This is why she had to cut corners when it came to changing the Midoriya family's memories, and why she was caught so easily. Note, her ability to look through memories has given her exposure to things most kids have not, somewhat increasing her intelligence, but not her maturity or experience. Chapter 8. Shorts 3. So for those who are wondering when the new house is coming, there is one more full chapter and one half chapter. This might change, but it's unlikely to. Once we get to the new house, that's when things really get good. Dad? Getting used to a new addition to the family had become much easier for Izuku. It helped that Izuku still recalled many of the false memories Kyoko gave him, giving him a general idea of how she was and how she acted, or at least how she perceived herself and how she acted. However, there was one thing Izuku had not gotten used to. "Oh daddy, you're too good at this game." Kyoko pouted as her character in Superhero Bash flew off screen. Izuku flinched slightly, and his body tensed up. He still wasn't used to being referred to as a father. He was still 15 after all, far too young for fatherhood in his opinion. At first, he had just let it go, wondering if she would stop referring to him as her father if they lived together, but that wasn't the case it seemed. Izuku's character was blasted off screen by Sansen's character while he was distracted. They were all playing together as a family. Even Inko decided to join in with the chaotic 8-player bash, and all the kids had teamed up against Izuku and Inko. Gatia. Sansen fist-bumped everyone, making several arms out of her body to fist-bump everyone at once. "Don't get too confident, children," Inko said, immediately stopping their celebration by knocking out 2 of them at once. As Izuku's only friend and parent, she had gotten very used to this game series. Most people were too wrapped up in the game to notice Izuku's behavior. However, Fu, as one not to get wrapped up in things, did see him react and wanted to try something. As Izuku got in on his next stock, Fu decided to try something. "Try dodging this, Dad," Fu said as he moved his character to attack Izuku. After being called Dad, Izuku flinched and got hit by the extremely telegraphed attack. This odd behavior caught the attention of the other kids and Inko. "Izuku, are you okay, honey?" Inko asked him. I'm fine." Izuku stuttered. "Are you really okay, Dad?" Fu asked him. Izuku flinched again, causing him to randomly attack the air. Seeing the pattern, Kiba decided to try it out next. "Dad, I'm about to attack you," Kiba shouted out loud. Izuku panicked and dodged too soon, causing him to get hit. "Ah, I see," referring to caretaker as father seems to freak him out and cause him to panic, Kiba said, before realizing what she just said. "Wait, what? You don't like it when we call you Dad?" K looked at him curiously. "Why? Well, I mean, you know." Izuku began to nervously sweat. "I'm not really sure why you want me to be your father figure, and I thought I was more of a big brother figure." All the kids gave Izuku a confused look. "But you are our dad," Fu pointed out as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. "As the man who takes care of us and provides for us, that makes you our adopted father," Kiba said matter-of-factly. "I'm not sure why this flusters you so much." "What?" Izuku was in shock. He knew that Kyoko thought of him as her father, but all of them did. "But wait, only Kyoko ever calls me Dad? The rest of you normally just say my name or call me a nickname. I refer to you as caretaker as it is your title, you take care of children. It is only respectful that I refer to by your title or as father. I simply choose to refer to you by title," Kiba explained. "I wasn't fully comfortable thinking of you as my dad at first, but after I got used to it I had already been calling you by your first name," Fu said. Dada. Sansen moved herself onto his lap. "I thought you liked being called Izuku, so I just called you that," K explained. "But I still always thought you were my dad now. You're a lot more like a dad than my other one." I always wanted you to be my dad," Eri said quietly. "I just want a dad who loves me," Kyoko said. Izuku wanted to point out how he was too unqualified, too young, too him. "Well, I suppose that makes me a grandmother now." Inko gave a small giggle in amusement. "Mom." Izuku gave her a betrayed look. She was legally the parent here, even if she wasn't around much. Then it struck him. He looked at the faces of the kids, his kids. He had been the one taking care of them, and while his mother did bring in lots of cash, he was also bringing in income and providing for them. He taught them, made sure they were safe, comforted them when they needed it, and showed them in affection. And at the end of the day, they just wanted a parent who would do all that for them. Not an older brother, a parent. But can I be that for them? I'm just a Deku. Izuku doubted himself. But if I don't do it no one will. Mom's too busy to be that parent for them like she was for me. And even if she wasn't, I couldn't ask her to. I'm the one who agreed to take care of them. So I have to take responsibility. If they want me to be their father, then I have to do everything I can to be the best father I can be. Okay, Izuku said, taking all this in as best he could. The idea still made him uneasy, but he was determined now. I guess I'm a dad now. I wonder if I can change some of the paperwork. Soon enough the kids went back to the game. However, Inko was distracted by proudly looking at her son, trying not to cry. My baby. Look at how you've grown. She thought. A new life? Izuku looked at the two children in front of him. Kyaku and Eri. So, Izuku wasn't sure how to propose this question. Eri. Do you remember that fake life Kyaku gave you? Eri nodded. For the most part, the kids had forgiven Kyaku after she apologized. Seeing as most of them could sympathize with her rather easily. However, Eri had been different after her memories came back. She had been quieter and a bit more out of it, staring off into the distance randomly and not hearing when someone was calling her. It's like she was somewhere else. So how do you feel about it? Izuku asked. There was a long pause. I wish it were real. Eri started to cry. Don't cry, big sis. Kyaku immediately got out of her seat to comfort her. Kyaku had immediately taken to Eri, mainly out of pity for the horrible life she lived. She always tried to comfort her and protect her and make her feel happy. It was very sweet in Izuku's opinion. But with Eri, it was as Izuku feared. She didn't want her memories back. She wanted her fake life instead. Don't worry big sis. I'll just replace your memories again. Kyaku was about to put her hands on Eri's head to activate her quirk, but Izuku stopped her. Daddy? Kyaku gave Izuku a confused look. We can't just replace her entire life with a fake one, Izuku told her. Why? Kyaku got a bit upset. She saw that her sister was suffering and wanted to help really badly. Eri was also curious as to why Izuku stopped her. When it came to tough decisions that involved his kids, Izuku had one way of doing it. He thought back to his own life and tried to either compare points of his life to theirs or put himself in their shoes. Back after All Might told him he couldn't be a hero. He hid away in his room, staying away from everyone else. When life got tough, he ran away. Until life caught up to him and gave him a new purpose. Now his life was much better. He had a goal, one he could reasonably achieve. He was helping people. All Might had even claimed they were friends. But did that mean he should forget his old one? He could. He was moving soon and it's not like he would need to see any of his old classmates or teachers again. Even Kaken. If we wanted to, he could just erase his past and embrace his future. But if he did that, would he still be the same person? In these kids, he saw a bit of himself. Someone who was rejected by others for something they couldn't control. If he forgot that part of himself, would he still look at them the same way? Of course, he was sure he would still love them all, but would he be able to relate to them as well? Would he have felt the need to agree to take care of an unknown but almost certainly large amount of children, just because he knew how it felt to finally be accepted after years of being scorned by others? Perhaps it was wrong to compare his life to Eri's considering the things he had been through paled when compared to the things she endured, but it was his only point of reference. He would make the decision he thought would best serve her. As he always would. I'm not a psychologist, but I do know that embracing a fake reality isn't healthy, Izuku told her. People only become stronger after they've gone through bad things. And I know that Eri one day will become stronger than any of us. Why you really think that? Eri asked him tearfully. Izuku smiled at her and embraced the two. Of course. There was a short pause before Izuku added. But at the same time no one should have to deal with what Eri went through, so Kyaku, I would like to ask you to erase some of Eri's memories. Just some of the stuff that Overhaul did to her and a few other things. Kyaku seemed nervous. She had never done anything that specific before. Can you help me? Of course, Izuku told her. Kyaku looked at Eri. She didn't relish the idea of looking back into Eri's memories. It was dark and horrible in there. But her family accepted her, and even after she used her quirk on them, so she had to do what she could for her family. She placed her hands on Eri's head, and their work began. Where does it go? Has she always been doing this? How did I never notice this? Fu thought, his eyes transfixed on a peculiar sight. Was eating. Or rather, she was feeding one of her snakes an egg. It was mesmerizing in a way, watching that snake swallow the egg. But it brought to mind one question. Fu got up from the couch where he and Sanson were watching TV and walked up to Where does that go? Where does what go? Asked, in return. The egg? If your snakes eat something, where does it go? Fu clarified. Looked at him, blinked again, and then said, Izuku. The two of them ran towards Izuku's room and saw him studying with Kyaku and Eri also studying in the room. Oh, did you two need something? Izuku asked, looking away from his mental health guidebook. When I feed my snakes, where does it go? Asked him enthusiastically. Well, you see, all your snakes are connected to one tube in your body, and that tube goes down your neck, through your body, and into your stomach. So technically you have two ways of eating. Izuku informed her. Wow, Izuku, you sure know a lot. You're a real egghead. Giggled. She was eating eggs, wasn't she? Izuku asked, giving the two an unimpressed look. Yes. Fu sighed. I can't feel pain, but her puns hurt me. At least you weren't in her head. Do you know how many puns I saw in there? Kyaku said. Well, to be fair, those were only for me to see. Snickered. I'm going to buy you a joke book. Please learn from it. Izuku deadpanned. Bad words, fuck. Kyaku said after stubbing her toe on the living room table. Izuku, who was cooking with one of his mother's aprons on, eyes widened, and alarm bells rang in his head. He immediately turned off the stove and ran towards Kyaku. Don't say that word. Izuku shouted. Yap. Kyaku was alarmed by how loud his voice was. Sorry. Izuku apologized. But you can't say that word. Why? Kyaku wasn't one to argue with her family and Izuku especially. She just wanted to know, what about that word made him react like that? After all, she saw her parents use it plenty of times in their memories, and he saw the evil blonde-haired kid Kaken say it a lot in Izuku's memories. It apostrophe a really bad word, Izuku told her. You just shouldn't say it. Okay? Okay. Kyaku agreed. Am I in trouble? No, I'll let it go this time since you didn't know. But I will be very upset and disappointed if you do it again. Izuku told her, seeing fear grow in her eyes. One of the things that made his job easier is that the only real punishment he needed to give most of them was just him being disappointed. And whatever you do, Izuku continued, you can't let any of your siblings hear you say fuck. Came a familiar voice from the ceiling. The two of them froze and looked up on the ceiling to see Sanson stuck to it, looking down and smiling at them. Fuck. The slime girl repeated with a smile. There was a short pause, before Izuku just sighed, and facepalmed. Of course that's one of the words she's able to understand easily. Secrets. No. No way. Kyaku refused. Izuku and Eri had gone on a walk. With Eri being the most introverted child here, Izuku felt he needed to make sure she went outside and got some sun every now and then. Kyaku was going to go with them, however, the rest of her siblings insisted that she stay. Why? Because since she looked into both Izuku and Eri's memories, She knew all their secrets. Why not? Kiba stomped her foot lightly on the floor, still making the floor creak and bend with her strength. Daddy made me promise not to tell anyone about what I saw in your memories without permission. Kyoku told them. And even if I could, you don't want to know what was in Iri's memories. Why? Is it really bad? Ka asked, looking concerned. She knew that Iri's life before meeting Izuku was rough and that some bad men used her for something bad. Like that guy who used her to rob places. But was it that much worse? We've all been through a lot of tough times. Fu pointed out. And we've all been through a lot of pain. What you've been through is nothing compared to Iri. Kyoku said seriously. It's bad. It's really bad. Even all the sad stories on TV aren't as bad as what happened to Iri. That actually surprised them. Characters on TVs typically had really sad backstories. So if Iri's backstory was really that bad? K frowned, her eyes growing anxious and concerned. Iri was the person who helped bring her into this family. The person who sympathized with her even after she used her quirk on Izuku. Her precious little sister. Izuku let me get rid of some of the bad memories, but she still has a lot of them. And a lot of the bad feelings. Kyoku nervously played with her hair. Izuku said that going through bad things can make you a lot stronger and that once the bad things are over you can make your life a lot better. Really? But if it's really, really bad, shouldn't she just forget it? Ka asked. Yee. Sanson agreed. She didn't like it when her siblings were sad. If bad memories were hurting her, then the bad memories should go away. What a foolish question, Kiba spoke out, making everyone look at her. It is clear that the caretaker's wisdom is lost on you. What do you mean? Kyoku asked her. Simple. While my infinite resolve comes from countless eons of my everlasting life, the hardships I've been through have done nothing but harden my resolve. To forget those would be to lose a part of my own will. Kiba declared. That and it would lessen my gratitude for the things I have today. And that would be sacrificing today's happiness to forget yesterday's sadness. To put it in simpler, non-crazy terms, she's saying all the bad things she went through are the reason she's so determined today, Fu explained. And while I know it's kinda hard for me to relate to you, because it's harder for me to feel things. But I've felt bad about things before, really bad. Flashback. Get out! Shouted a woman as she threw Fu out the door of a house. Fu fell to the ground. And while he felt no physical pain, he was still crying. Mama, no. Please. I am sorry. Fu begged for forgiveness. This is the second time you've bit someone. And you got your rotten body parts all over the floor. The woman, Fuhai's mother, shouted at him. I don't want a disgusting undead monster as a son. And are those tears? So have you just been pretending not to feel all this time? Get out. And never come back. Flashback end. Fu felt a small flash of pain bubble up inside him as he remembered that. But it was gone as fast as it came. But I learned things about myself after those, and if I lose those memories then I don't learn anything, Fu said. Sanson, if you forgot all that time you spent in the jar, would you enjoy moving around and being free as much? Goo? Sanson thought hard about that question. She hated being in that jar. It was so boring and not being able to move much was a nightmare. She had been there so long she thought she was gonna be stuck there forever. And she was so happy and thankful when she finally got released. Now she always made sure to move around with the energy of a nuclear reactor. And would you be able to take it as well as you do when we point out that your jokes are garbage? Fu asked, letting go of the insult to her punning wit. Thought hard about that. A lot of people insulted her. A lot of people. And eventually, she just learned to roll with the punches and was almost immune to it. It didn't offset how terrible she felt back then, but it was something positive she carried with her to this day. Bad things happened to us. And those things are over now. We must use those bad experiences to carve out a better future. Kiba said. After that rousing speech, the others started to understand a little. We should trust Izuku. Even if we don't understand what he's trying to do, we should trust he's always trying to help us. Determined, Kyoko thought about that. While she had seen the horrors of Iri's memories, she had also seen Izuku's memories as well. She's seen just how brave he was saving Iri from that horrible man, how much time and energy he put into trying to help every single one of his kids. How kind and forgiving he'd been since he was young. Immediately she felt bad for showing even the slightest bit of doubt in her new father. Hey, if you can't tell us about Iri, what about Izuku? Asked. Kyoko shook her head. He said not to say anything. But the pink-haired girl's fist clenched in anger, remembering what she saw in his memories. Iri's memories left her horrified and were the source of most of her current nightmares. But Izuku's memories just left her enraged. Logically speaking, Iri's memories should make her angrier, seeing as the things done to her were much worse. However, the small child couldn't view Overhaul as human. It didn't help that when she saw people's memories, she saw it through their perspective, meaning she only saw Overhaul through Iri's eyes, making it easier to just think of Overhaul as a monster. A single monster that was stopped, and had gotten what he deserved. The people that tormented Izuku were numerous and very human. She was infuriated that what seemed like the entire world hated Izuku, for no other reason than he didn't have a quirk. Not a single person tried to help him, or do anything to stop the torment. Iri's memories had taught her what kind of monsters lurked outside. Izuku's memories taught her the world was cruel, and her own memories, and that of her siblings, enforced this narrative. Daddy's strong too, Kyoko said in anger. And he's gonna keep getting stronger. Meanwhile, with Izuku and Iri, the two walked through the neighborhood, taking a route that would deliberately avoid Bakugo's house. Izuku hasn't talked to Bakugo in a long time. And now that he was moving, it was possible that he may not talk to him for a while longer. It wasn't possible that they'd never see each other again. After all, Inko and Mitsuki were still good friends and kept in contact with each other. And he knew Bakugo signed up for UA and had no doubt he was going to get in and become a hero, meaning he was probably going to see him on the news someday. But Izuku didn't have it in him to talk to him again. Every time he thought about it, bad memories came up that he had been working very hard to repress. One day he knew he and Bakugo would talk again. Hopefully, when he was ready. Iri, Izuku said suddenly. Iri responded, still keeping a tight grip on his hand as they walked. You're doing really well. Izuku praised her. You went outside with almost no hesitation this time. Iri nodded. Izuku? Yes, Izuku said. Do you like going outside? Iri asked him. Not really, Izuku answered honestly. Before I met any of you I stayed inside almost all the time. Then why do we go outside a lot? Iri asked. Well, there are a lot of things to do outside. You can go to the park, the arcade, go out to eat, and a lot more, Izuku said. And it's important to get some sunlight and fresh air. Iri paused for a moment to take in what he said, before responding with, then why didn't you like to go outside? Well, I wasn't the best at dealing with other people, Izuku explained, downplaying how those other people treated him. So I stayed inside to avoid them. There was a short pause before Iri continued. Kyoko said that everyone but our family are cruel and mean, Iri told him. Izuku blinked, shocked for about a second before he realized just how much sense that made. After all, her only experience with other people besides their family was her previous abusive family, and all their memories, which mostly consisted of other people being terrible. I need to find her some friends. Actually, not that I think about it. I should probably find all of them some friends outside the family, Izuku thought. Actually, considering my own lack of friends, I may need some help with that. Well, Kyoko has only really ever seen bad people outside our family. But there are good people. like All Might. Izuku told her. Eri didn't respond. One day, you and everyone else will make friends, and you'll all play together and be happy. Izuku continued. Eri kept quiet. If Izuku said that it would happen, then she had to believe him. And try her best to be ready for that day. Chapter 9, Caught in the Rain. Hey everyone, it's time for Kota. Now I need to remind everyone, canonically Kota is 5 when we first see him and is 6 currently. Just letting you know I technically aged him up a little. Also, I somehow kept forgetting to address the Monster Museum thing. Yeah, funnily enough. I took inspiration from a lot of different things, but that wasn't one of them. At least not at first. Yeah, the connections were just kind of a huge coincidence. I have watched Monster Museum and since you all reminded me of it I did take inspiration for one of the characters that will be introduced later. Also, this chapter is split into 2 parts. So keep that in mind. Oh, and also keep in mind, Kota is still as much of a little shit as he was when we first met him. Anyway, on to the chapter. It may not go as you expect. Izuku looked at the sight before him in disbelief. This. He had been taking an early morning jog. How he managed to free himself from the dog pile of kids on top of him without waking them even he didn't know, and found it had been raining. Still, no pain to gain, so he put on a raincoat and some boots and started running. However, during the middle of his jog through the park, he found something he really should have been expecting by now. In front of him was a small child, about 6, with black hair, a pair of shorts, a white shirt, and a hat with 2 spikes on it collapsed in a bush. Immediately Izuku looked around, wondering if the boy's parents were anywhere around. Of course, there was no one around. After making sure he wasn't kidnapping a child, he immediately scooped him up and ran towards his house. He's in bad shape, he's shivering a lot. How long was he out in that rain? And he looks like he hasn't eaten in a while too. Izuku ran as fast as he could. He needed to get home so he could help this kid. The next day, Kota opened his eyes slowly, blinking at the light flooding his eyes. Ow! My body hurts. He groaned. His body was sore and moving even just a little was a strain on his little body. He looked around to the best of his ability and saw that he was in a bed. He was covered by blankets and there was an IV drip attached to his arm. Where am I? I passed out in the park. Did someone bring me to the hospital? This doesn't look like a hospital. Kota was confused and tired. So, very tired. He closed his eyes, fading in and out of consciousness until eventually he gave in and passed out. There was nothing. Kota stood in a black void. The only things along with him were 2 body bags. Kota stared at the bags. His body frozen by the many emotions running through him. Anger. Sadness. Fear. Betrayal. He just stared at them for a while, until his body moved forward. But he wasn't controlling it. Dread grew inside of him as he moved closer to the bags. No. Stop. Stop moving. Kota's body grabbed the zippers of the body bags and started opening them. Stop. Kota gasped and jolted upwards, only to be met with pain. Ah! Kota fell back down onto the bed and started freaking out, moving around despite the pain, hyperventilating all the while. Mama! Papa! Kota cried, tears following down his face. Then, blue goo suddenly came from seemingly nowhere and moved on top of him, retaining his body and keeping him from moving. Sanson's head formed right in front of Kota's face. Beef. After a while, Kota started breathing normally again. Where am I? Who are you? Kota asked, still panicking a little. Sanson. Sanson stated her name. Sanson. Is that your name? Kota asked. Sanson nodded. Okay. Where am I? Kota repeated. Whoa, Sanson answered. Whoa? Where's Whoa? Kota asked, confused by Sanson's way of talking. Where? Sanson said. Where? Where what? Kota was getting a little frustrated at the lack of proper communication going on. She was also still wrapped around his body. Part of him wanted to tell her to get off, but she also, her cool slime did feel kinda nice on his sore fevered body. However, before things could go any further, the door opened and Izuku walked in with Eri and Kyoko behind him. "You're awake," Izuku said in a relieved tone. "I was worried you might not wake up. You were in really bad condition when I found you." "Where am I?" Kota asked impatiently. Annoyed at having to ask so many times, as well as slightly fearful due to waking up in an unknown place. "I'm sorry, you must be confused," Izuku apologized. "I'm Izuku Midoriya. The girls you see are my daughters." "Kind of." Kota gave him a skeptical look. He may be very young, but even he knew that Izuku was way too young to have kids, especially this many. "Lair." Kyoko gave Kota a vicious death glare. "Daddy isn't a lair." "It's okay, Kyoko, I would be skeptical if I was in his position too." Izuku tried to calm her, before addressing Kota. "I know it's hard to believe, but there's been some special circumstances that lead to this." Kota still gave him a distrustful look for a few moments, before looking at Sansen. "Oh, right. Sorry about her. I saw you were fussing in your sleep and the doctor said that you shouldn't move around too much, so I told her to stay here and keep you from moving if you started thrashing," Izuku explained. "Sansen, you can get off now. Good work." Sansen nodded and unwrapped herself from Kota's body, and oozed over to Izuku, slithering up his body and winding around his neck like a scarf. "I'd would." Sansen rubbed her face against Izuku's cheek. "Yes, you did. Yes, you did." Izuku praised her while petting her head. "And you're speaking so well today too. You just need to learn to not use the W's so much." Kota stared at the four of them for a few seconds, before deciding that now was the time to leave. He pushed himself up and immediately remembered the pain. "Ah! Didn't you hear him? You can't move, dummy." Kyoko scolded him. "Kyoko, what have I said about name calling?" Izuku said, sternly. "I only called him a dummy." Kyoko defended. "I could have called him one more word and that's 10 points off," Izuku warned her. Kyoko promptly closed her mouth. Izuku turned back to Kota. "But she is right. I told you not to move or you'll just get even sicker." "You can't tell me what to do," Kota said defiantly, still glaring at Izuku while trying to move out of the bed. "Sansen. Sorry to ask you to do this again, but can you keep him from moving?" Izuku asked remorsefully. "No, Pop." Sansen gave him a thumbs up. The good girl then quickly moved over Kota, making several arms and moving Kota back onto the center of the bed, putting the covers back over him and keeping him from moving in one fell swoop. "Hey!" Kota protested. "Let go. This is kidnapping." "It's not really," Izuku sighed. "While you were asleep I looked around to see if anyone was looking for you." He had actually been looking to see if his parents were looking for him, but knowing his situation it would probably be best not to say that. "I found your info online. Kota Izumi, age 6. You ran away from home a while ago and your guardians have been looking for you," Izuku explained. "I got in contact with the Pussycats and they said they would be here to pick you in a few days and until then you'll be staying here." "No. I don't want to go back. Let me go. Let me go." Kota tired but he couldn't even really struggle against Sansen's goo. Izuku looked at Eri and Kyoko. "Could you two go play with your siblings?" But Kyoko and Eri didn't like leaving Izuku's side. As such, they were basically attached to Izuku's side. "Please," Izuku insisted, giving them both a begging look. Izuku didn't ask them for much beyond behaving themselves. So all the kids felt inclined to do as he said whenever he asked something. Kyoko and Eri, especially. After some hesitation, the two nodded and left the room. Izuku walked towards Kota, stopping once he reached a close but still respectful distance. He didn't want to make the poor boy any more uncomfortable than he was already. "If you promise not to keep struggling, then I'll tell Sansen to get off of you," Izuku told him. I don't want to have to restrain you like this, but I also don't want you to hurt yourself. Just let me go. Kota continued to struggle with no progress. Izuku waited patiently sitting on his chair a few feet away. I feel bad for having Sansen stay here. I know she likes moving around after all. Hopefully, he tires himself out soon. An hour later. As it turns out, Kota was not a boy who was easily discouraged. As he continued trying to struggle for the next hour. And given the fact that his body wasn't actually moving, he wasn't actually using much energy, so it took him a while to tucker himself out. In the meantime, in order to entertain Sansen, Izuku had set up a table between them and the two of them started playing tic-tac-toe, Sansen making a hand and stretching it over to play. So I guess this confirms that she doesn't have to make a head to see. Izuku thought as he made another X. So does that just mean she can see using her entire body? I'll have to ask her later. I won. Sansen cheered, using her arm to show her excitement. Izuku was letting her win some of these, of course. He loved seeing her get excited. As he got ready to start a new game, Kota spoke. Fine. I give up. Just get her off of me. Kota sighed in defeat. Did he stop moving? Izuku asked Sansen, who in response turned her hand into a head and nodded. All right. You can go play with the others now. Izuku said. Sansen smiled and untangled herself from Kota, before bouncing out of the room. No bouncing in the house. You'll break something. Izuku called after her. After a few moments, Izuku sighed and looked back at Kota, who was glaring at him. Are you okay? Izuku asked him kindly. I'm sorry that I have to keep you here, but you could get seriously hurt otherwise. I'm fine. Kota insisted. Deku. Immediately Izuku gained a concerned expression, and he put his head on Kota's forehead. A fever, just as I thought, Izuku said. Kota was about to tell him to get off when suddenly he got a case of deja vu. The way Izuku held his hand on his head, and the look on his face, and even the words he was saying reminded him off. Izuku took his hand off him and walked to the door. I have to go make lunch. I'll make you some soup and get you some medicine. I don't need grrrrrr. Kota's face went red with embarrassment, as his stomach protested what his mouth was saying. In truth, Kota was more than hungry. He was starving. But he also really didn't want to take anything from this Izuku guy. However, the pain in his stomach reminded him of what little choice he had in the matter. Tch. Fine. Kota said begrudgingly. Izuku gave a soft smile. At least I don't have to try and force him to eat. Could you come here please? Izuku called out to the living room. Kota wondered who this person was. After a few moments, the snake-haired girl ran into the room. Yes, Dad? Ka asked, a big smile on her face. When did she start calling me that? Izuku shook his head. Could you watch Kota while I prepare food for everyone? Okay. Can I have something with eggs in it? Ka asked, her snakes hissing with excitement. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Izuku said. It's okay. The longer I wait for eggs, then the yummier they are when I have them. K said, repeating something Izuku once told her. Izuku smiled back at her, before petting the snakes on her head a little. That's right. Thank you. No problem. I'm a rock-solid pick. Giggled. Moving on to rock puns. At least you're adding some variety. Izuku tried to cringe at the terrible puns to come. With that, Izuku left for the kitchen, and copped on Izuku's chair. Hi. My name's Kesseki. Izuku Midoriya. But you can call me K. Introduced herself. What's your name? Kota was caught off guard by both her attitude and appearance, and so, all he said was, you okay? Snake got your tongue? Asked him jokingly, her snakes cackling? In delight. Are those alive? Kota asked. He'd never seen a quirk that gave someone living snake hair. It was cool but also kind of worrisome. Kind of. Shrugged. She moved a finger up to her hair and started petting the snakes. It's like they're part of me but also not. Izuku says it's like having multiple personalities, but I don't know what that means, and when he tried to explain it I got confused. That didn't really answer Kota's question and only left the boy more confused. Anyway, you never said what your name is. Reminded him. It ''s ... Kota. Kota Izumi. Kota introduced himself. Cool, what's your quirk? Asked him. Mine turns people to stone when they look at my eyes. That's dangerous. Kota thought until he remembered he can't see her eyes through the visor she's wearing. Frowned a bit at his initial panic, but quickly went back to her default happy state. Don't worry. I won't turn you to stone. This visor stops my quirk, stone cold. My control over my quirk rocky, and I kept accidentally using it on people by Miss Snake. Stop, Kota groaned. Please stop. Your jokes are terrible. All you, not another one, complained. One day I'll find someone who likes my puns. I doubt it. Kota deadpanned. Perked back up again. So what's your quirk? Why, so you can make more bad jokes? Kota asked her rudely. No. So I can make more awesome jokes. Corrected him. I'm definitely not telling you my quirk, Kota responded. Pouted for a moment before she got an idea. Okay. Let's play a game. A game? Kota repeated skeptically. You tell me your favorite food and I'll see if I can guess your quirk. Said. What does food have to do with quirks? Kota asked. Lots. Izuku says that quirks can make someone really like a food or really not like a food. Explained. Like how I love eggs because of my snakes, and how Fu loves meat because he's a zombie, and Eri loves apples because she's part unicorn. Unicorns aren't real. Kota pointed out. Yes, they are. Eri has a horn, so that means she's part unicorn. Responded. Lots of real animals have horns. Maybe she's part bull or something. Kota said. But Eri only has one horn. And unicorns are the only animals that have one horn, so Eri's part unicorn. Crossed her arms and smiled proudly at her foolproof argument. Kota tried to come up with a rebuttal, but he realized he didn't know any animals with only one horn. There are other animals with one horn. Do you know any? Smirked smugly. No. Kota looked away from her, embarrassed and refusing to admit defeat. Then I win. Stood up proudly in the chair. Now tell me your favorite food. Sushi. Kota answered hesitantly. Okay, sushi. Concentrated on trying to figure out his quirk. Sushi's made of fish. Do you have a shark quirk? No, Kota responded. How about a whale quirk? Asked. Do I look like a whale? Kota gave her an "Are you serious" look. Is that a no? Asked. No. Kota answered. How about sometime later? What about its water? Kota shouted in frustration. My quirk lets me shoot out and control water. Oh. Pouted in frustration. I focused too much on animals. I didn't even know that many animals ate fish, Kota admitted. I like animals. I want to take care of them when I get older. Said enthusiastically. What do you want to do when you get older? Why do you care so much? Kota asked her in return. Why do you keep asking me all these dumb questions? I don't know. I guess I want to know more about you. Admitted. I don't know anyone else other than my new family. And all the people besides my new family are really mean. But you're kind of nice. There were a lot of things in what she just said that left him confused. Mostly the last thing she said. You think I am ... nice? Yeah. Most people call me ugly when they see me. Or scary. Or a lot of other bad things. And when they find out what my quirk is they call me a monster. Said without losing even a hint of her cheeriness. But you didn't call me any bad things. So you've been nice to me. That apostrophe s ... That's not being nice, all those other guys are just jerks. Kota pointed out. He may not be the nicest person around, but even he knew it was rude to say the least, to call someone a monster. How could this girl say all that with a smile on her face? Izuku says that too. He says I should ignore them because they don't know what they're talking about. Repeated what Izuku said. Well, he's right. Kota didn't think that was particularly ... pretty or easy to look at, and he'd be lying if he said he wanted her and her snakes to get much closer to him. But judging someone because of their quirk was dumb in his opinion. Quirks are dumb, Kota muttered. Before it could respond to that, Izuku came back into the room. Food's done. Since I was making soup for Kota, I decided to make some for everyone else too. Izuku explained. Okay. Hopped off the chair and ran to the door before looking up at Izuku. Is Kota gonna eat with us? Well, he can't move too much, so I don't think he can make it to the table, Izuku said. That irritated Kota. It's not like he wanted to eat with everyone, but he didn't like someone saying what he could and couldn't do. I can get to the table. Kota protested. He tried to move again only for pain to shoot through his body, stopping him completely. Ah. Don't move. Izuku told him. If you want to eat with everyone, I can figure something out. Izuku made his way over to Kota and carefully he picked up the small child and took him into his arms. Kota wanted to object to being handled by Izuku, but something about the way Izuku held him was ... pleasantly familiar. It was warm and comfortable. Disarming in a way Kota couldn't put his finger on. He only snapped back to reality when Izuku set him down in his chair. Wow! Kota looked around and saw all the other kids staring at him. And there were more kids than Kota had been expecting. Not including Izuku, there were 6 in total. He's rather plain looking. Kiba inspected him. I don't think he's plain, I think we just look weird. Fu deadpanned. HMPH, Kyoko pouted and looked away from Kota. Her disdain for him was very evident. Guys, you should introduce yourselves first, Izuku told them. Ah, my apologies caretaker, I forgot my manners. Kiba apologized, before standing up in the chair. My name is Kiba Midoriya. Proud member of the Midoriya clan and the immortal destined ruler of mankind. Kota gave her the most confused look he'd given anyone in his life. What? She's a weirdo. She says stuff like that but it doesn't really mean anything, Fu explained. Hey! Kiba shouted in outrage. My name is Fu Midoriya. Fu gave a simple introduction. Sansan my dear. Sansan tried to introduce herself, confusing Kota even more. Her name is Sansan Midoriya. She has a hard time speaking because she's made of slime. Explained with a smile. You already know this. But my name's Kesseki Midoriya. There was a short pause, as it took a moment for the less eager members of the family to speak up. I'm Eri Midoriya, Eri said just loud enough for them to hear. It's nice to meet you. I'm Kyoko Midoriya. Kyoko curtly introduced herself. Izuku gave Kyoko a concerned look for a moment, before moving on. Okay, everyone, this is Kota. As you know, he'll be staying with us for a few days until his guardians come back to get him. Guardians? Kiba asked. Does he have bodyguards? And no, I mean his legal guardians, Izuku explained. A legal guardian is someone who watches over you and is in charge of your well-being. I'm considered the legal guardian for all of you. So are his parents coming? Asked. No, Kota responded almost immediately. He glared at the ground fiercely. No, they're not. Let's not talk about Kota parents, Izuku said nervously. They're a sore topic. It's not like our parents were nice too either. Did they abandon him too? Kyoko said bitterly. Kota froze completely. Kyoko. Izuku picked her up. We are having a talk, young lady. The rest of you can eat. I'll be back in a moment, please. Behave yourselves. With that, Izuku took Kyoko and left. Sorry about her. Fu apologized. She doesn't. What did she mean? Kota asked all of a sudden. What? Fu asked. She asked if my parents abandoned me too, Kota repeated Kyaku's words. What did she mean? Oh, well, most of our parents didn't want us after our quirks came, Fu explained. So they threw us out. Threw you out? But I thought Izuku was your dad? Kota was really confused. Caretaker found us and decided to take care of us. We are not related by blood, but he adopted us and serves as our father. Kiba explains. Adopted? Kota asked, not knowing what that word meant. You don't know what adopted means? Ka asked, reckoning a headshake from Kota. Well, if a mommy and daddy don't want their child, someone else can take them and become their new mommy or daddy, or both. Wait. Moms and dads can leave their kids? Kota asked. While this was common sense to most, this was news to Kota. As far as he was concerned, parents had kids and they took care of them until either the kid got older or the parents died. Hearing that parents could just leave their kids bewildered him. He couldn't imagine his parents just leaving him. But they did, Kota thought. They choose their stupid hero jobs over me. They abandoned me. Are you okay, Kota? Asked him with concern in her voice. Huh? Kota was snapped out of his thoughts. He felt something wet on his face, and after bringing his hand up to his cheek, he realized he had been crying. His face turned red from embarrassment and he quickly tried to save face. I'm fine, let's just eat already. Kota quickly tried to go for his food, but he moved a bit too fast. Ow. The other kid shot Kota some more concerned looks, but eventually moved on and started eating. Author's notes. So this is part 1. I split it up into 2 parts because it was getting too long. Please tell me your thoughts and have a nice day. Chapter 10, It Hides the Tears. The next day Kota felt a lot better. All the top-of-the-line medicine, soup, and lots of bed rest had done their job properly, and while Kota wasn't fully healthy again, he did feel well enough to move. Izuku still made him stay in bed for the most part, and unfortunately, there wasn't a lot for him to do while bedridden. And so that's what led to where he is right now, watching Izuku and Eri do Eri's quirk training. Just remember that video of that river I showed you, Izuku told her. Just imagine a slow stream. Kota watched in silence, confused as to why Izuku was handing her an apple core. Eri clutched the apple core tightly and took a deep breath. Her horn grew, and energy started cascading over her. The apple core slowly started regrowing the eaten parts of the apple it once was. MMMRRR. Eri tried as hard as she could to tame her quirk, trying to keep it from running rampant and going out of control. She imagined that river Izuku showed her on the computer. She tried to slow the stream. Kota watched in awe as the apple slowly but surely put the apple back together. Once the apple was mostly restored, however, Eri's grip on her quirk started to slip. Once Izuku noticed her horn growing even more, he saw the apple coming back faster. He took a metal ruler and slapped the apple out of her hand. I can't control it, Eri said as she started to completely lose control. Kota's eyes widened as Eri's energy started growing and getting more wild and erratic. He inched back on the bed, sliding further away from her. Eri, you can stop now. Imagine a dam. Imagine the river stopping. Izuku told her. Eri tried her best. Her horn started shrinking a little, but almost immediately it started growing again. It kept shrinking and growing for a while, but it was clear that Eri was fighting a losing battle. With an upset look on his face, Izuku grabbed the tranq gun that was in his pocket, took it out, and aimed it at Eri. Wait, is he going to shoot her? Kota thought in alarmed confusion. And indeed he did. Izuku shot Eri's arm with the gun, and the dart embedded itself into her arm. A few seconds later Eri's eyes started to droop, her horn stopped emitting energy and began sinking back into her, and in another few seconds, Eri's quirk completely deactivated and she started falling over. Izuku caught her just before she fell, and lifted her into his arms. You shot her, Kota stated. He was dumbfounded, clueless as to what just happened or why. "It's a dart gun," Izuku explained, pulling the dart out of Eri's arm and showing it to Kota. "It's not meant to hurt someone like a real gun. It shoots out these needle things called darts. They're filled with something that makes you go to sleep for a while. Don't worry, she'll be fine when she wakes up." Oh, things made slightly more sense knowing Izuku hadn't shot her with a real gun, but Kota was still really confused about the rest of the situation. "Why did you shoot her?" "Well, Eri's quirk is." Izuku stopped talking as he put Eri onto a futon he had set up beforehand. After he finished putting Eri to sleep on the futon, he got up, moved his chair over to the bed, sat down, and faced Kota. "What do you think of quirk bias, Kota?" Izuku asked him. "I don't know what that is," Kota answered simply. "Oh, right, sorry." Izuku blushed with embarrassment. Quirk bias is when someone judges someone else because of their quirks. Some people think people are bad if they have scary quirks, or they think someone is better than others because they have a strong quirk. "Oh, that." Kota's tone was bitter, and his eyes gave away his disdain for the concept. "It's stupid. Quirks are all stupid, but quirk bias or whatever is even dumber." Izuku sighed with relief. He had gotten the answer he hoped for. Now he could tell him. "Okay, Eri's quirk is ... It's complicated. As long as it's a living thing like a human, plant, or animal, she can return it back to how it used to be." Izuku tried to explain it in the simplest way possible. Like if someone bit an apple, she can make the apple whole again, or if someone is hurt, she can make them healthy again. Eri has a hard time holding back her quirk. And if she touches someone while her quirk is at full power ... They go back to before they existed. "What does that mean?" Kota didn't quite understand what he meant. "They die, Kota," Izuku explained simply. "If a person touches her while her quirk's at full power, they die." Kota's eyes became the size of dinner plates. "Wait, die? Like they're dead?" "Yes, Kota, they die," Izuku told him. He didn't like telling people about Eri's quirk, but if Kota was going to be with them for a while, he deserved and needed to know about the danger of Eri's quirk. That ''s ... really dangerous." Kota freaked out slightly at the thought that he could have died if he'd been just a few feet closer to Eri. "Yes, it is." Izuku nodded. "So we have to be very careful when we're doing her quirk training." "Why are you training her quirk? Shouldn't she not use her quirk at all?" "Unless..." Kota made a bitter face as a thought crossed his mind. "Does she wanna be a hero too? Eri?" "No. I don't think so anyway. I think she wants to be a doctor or nurse or something," Izuku told him. "But sometimes Eri's quirk turns on by itself. If she gets really stressed or panics too much, it'll turn on and she can't control it. So we do the quirk training so she can control it one day, and no one will have to be afraid of her quirk anymore." That ... made sense to Kota ... kind of. He still thought it would be better if she just never used her quirk. A quirk that dangerous was scary. And then another thought came to his mind. Izuku apparently adopted all these kids. That would include Eri. So apparently Izuku had signed himself up for taking care of a girl that could kill him with a touch. And so naturally the question that came to his mind was, "Why?" Kota asked him. "Why?" Izuku repeated. "Why did you adopt Eri?" Kota asked. "And what happened to her real parents?" Izuku sighed. Eri's story is a very sad one. And once you're not ready to hear. But it goes like this. When Eri's quirk manifested, her parents were scared of it. So they gave her away to a bad man, who hurt her a lot. She ran away from him, and that's when I found her. I hid her, and I called the heroes, and they arrested the bad man. But Eri's parents still didn't want her. And even if they did, they couldn't just take her back after abandoning her. And Eri's quirk was scary, very scary, so a lot of people didn't want to adopt her. But I did. "Why?" Kota asked. "It's not like he hated Eri," But he'd be lying if he said he wasn't afraid of her quirk. Did the others know? Why weren't they afraid? She had nowhere to go, because of her quirk, something she couldn't control. Her life was almost ruined. Nobody wanted to be near her, and it wasn't because of anything she did. Izuku explained. And I know how painful that is. They all do. They all do. Does everyone here have dangerous quirks? Kota asked. All the kids do, Izuku told him. I don't. I don't have a quirk at all, Izuku said. Kota's eyes were starting to hurt from the constant widening. This was a lot for him to process. Since when could people not have quirks? The world has a very limited view of what quirks are okay, and what quirks are not, Izuku explained. And if you fall into the second category, then the world will hurt and shun you. Kota thought about that. He knew the world was cruel. It had taken his parents from him after all. But his parents made the choice to leave him behind. These people didn't have any choice. That just made the world seem a little bit darker. What do you think of heroes, Kota? Izuku asked him. Kota's face almost instantly tightened into a scowl. I think they're stupid. Heroes and villains all show off their flashy quirks and kill each other for no reason. Izuku frowned. I guess from his point of view, with such a limited view of the world, it does seem like all that violence is happening for no reason. Maybe if I can explain it just right. After a bit of thought, Izuku spoke. Kota, why do you think villains exist? To fight heroes, Kota answered. Izuku shook his head. That's not why. Villains exist because there are bad people. Bad people who want to hurt others. Why? Kota asked. Well, sometimes they want to steal things from them for money, or sometimes they just want to hurt people because they like hurting people. It wasn't a completely accurate explanation, but he would learn the nuisance as he got older. Heroes exist to protect people from those villains. Without heroes, those people would be free to hurt people all they want. They'd kill a lot more people. And no one could stop them. Why don't people just use their quirks to stop them? Kota asked. Izuku shook his head again. If people could only use their quirks to defend themselves, then that would make quirks even more important. The world would completely revolve around quirks, and people with weak quirks or quirkless people would suffer even more. Kota frowned as he imagined the world Izuku was describing. The world was already obsessed with quirks. All he heard was quirk this, quirk that. If the world became even more obsessed with quirks. Do you see why heroes are necessary now? Izuku asked Kota. Kota didn't answer. He couldn't find an argument to counter what Izuku said. It all made sense, at least more than before. But he just couldn't let go of his outlook. He wasn't ready to. Izuku took a deep breath. He was about to approach a sensitive topic, and one he himself probably shouldn't get involved in. But now seemed like a better time than ever. Kota, your parents didn't die for no reason. And they didn't abandon you. Izuku told him. They died so a dozen other little boys and girls didn't lose their parents. Kota remained silent, looking away from Izuku. The two sat in silence for a while, until crash. The sound of something breaking the living room reached their ears. Izuku facepalmed. Oh, please don't be Kiba again. Kota, just rest. And try to think about what I told you. Please. With that, Izuku ran to the living room, leaving Kota to his thoughts. Later that night. Hey. Kota was woken from his sleep by someone's voice. Kota groaned. He didn't want to wake up. Turning out thinking was tiring, if you did it a lot. Wake up. The voice whispered. Kota felt whoever it was calling him shake him a little. Go away, Kota told them. Grrr. Wake up or I'll make you think you're a plant. The voice whispered angrily. Kota thought about that for a moment. It sounded ridiculous, but if all the other kids here had powerful quirks like Izuku said they did, then they probably could do something like that. Deciding he'd rather not be a plant, Kota opened his eyes. Turns out the one waking him up was Kyaku. and she did not look pleased. Although to be fair, Kota only ever saw her frowning, so apparently she just really didn't like him. "Come with me," Kyaku told him. Kota didn't really want to follow her. He was tired and wanted to go back to bed. Plus this girl was mean and he didn't feel like going anywhere with her. But on the other hand, she could make him think he's a plant. Kota decided to get up and follow her, leaving the room and entering the living room. Sanson and Fu were watching TV. Sanson was copying the heroes on TV while Fu was writing things down in a notebook. Fu looked at them for a moment with his constantly neutral expression. "Why are you two up? Why are you up?" Kota asked in return. "The Pussycats, Izuku, and back when they were alive, his parents had all stressed how important it was that he sleep at night. And it seemed like Izuku had a similar mentality towards all the other children, so why were these two up? Our bodies are weird, so we don't need sleep," Fu explained. "We can sleep, but Izuku doesn't force us to. But you guys definitely do need sleep. So why are you up? We're just gonna talk for a few minutes, and then we'll go back to bed. I promise," Kyaku told Fu. Fu squinted at Kyaku, trying to decide whether or not he believed them. Izuku typically trusted him as the reasonable one to keep everyone else in line. But still, if it was just a little bit. "Don't take too long, or I'll tell Izuku." With that warning given, Fu turned back to the TV and to his notes. With that, Kyaku led Kota into the kitchen, where she finally stopped. She turned to him and gave him a very serious look that most adults would have found more cute than anything else. "I don't like you," Kyaku told him. "I know." Kota crossed his arms, trying to look tough. "You're rude to Daddy even after he saved you. You would have died if he didn't do that, you know," Kyaku pointed out. Kota's expression actually turned a bit sheepish. He knew he had been in bad shape, but he didn't know his life was in danger. He already felt kind of bad after seeing how nice Izuku was, but now he felt really bad about how mean he was. "And he gave you food, let you sleep in the bed, and treated you nicely." Kyaku told him. "Okay, I get it." Kota lashed out, "But," Kyaku said, her tone suddenly changing to a slightly more patient one. "I looked through your memories, and I'm sorry I was mean to you too." "Read my memories?" Kota asked, ignoring the apology in favor of the more interesting and possibly frightening part of that sentence. "Yes, my quirk let me see and change memories," Kyaku explained. "So I know about your parents." "Yeah. So what?" Kota put back on his tough guy persona, the mention of his parents snapping him out of his guilt trip. "So I'm sorry. It must have hurt losing them. If I lost Izuku." Kyaku didn't finish that sentence. She wiped away a few tears forming in her eyes at the thought of losing Izuku after finding him. "But I can help you." "Help me?" Kota repeated, not sure where she was going with this. "I don't need help." "Yes, you do," Kyaku shouted. "You're so mean because you're angry, so maybe if you're not angry, you'll be nice." "And how are you gonna do that?" Kota pouted. "Well, you're angry because your parents died. So you'll stop being angry if you can't remember your parents," Kyaku explained. Kota's expression fell, as she slowly realized what Kyaku was suggesting. "I'll erase all the memories of your parents, then you can live here and Izuku can be your parent." Kyaku laid out her plan, of course not seeing the several issues with it. But to Kota, the plan sounded solid. All the pain and sadness he felt, the betrayal, the confusing complicated thoughts, all of it would be gone. And things could kind of go back to how they used to be. Izuku was a nice person and he clearly cared for these kids as his parents cared for him. It could work. If not for one problem. He really hated that idea. The thought of all the memories of his parents disappearing. His parents just completely disappearing from his mind. He hated it. "No," Kota said in a low voice. What?" Kyaku was taken aback. She clearly was not expecting that answer. "I said no," Kota said, louder. "I don't want to forget my parents." Why? Kyoku asked him, mad that her perfect plan hit a snag. You kept saying that they abandoned you, that they left you, and that you hated them. That was another thing about Kota that made her angry. She had to look and work to find a family that loved her, and he was just born with one. He was born with a family that loved him, and after they were gone he became ungrateful of what he had. Sure, Izuku told her he was angry and confused about his parents dying, but even if Izuku died while she would be extremely angry and sad, she would never say anything bad about him. Why, yeah, well, Kota felt what he wanted to say. It was stuck in his throat, but he just couldn't say it. What? Why don't you want to forget people you hate so much? Kyoku asked. Because because I don't hate them. Kota shouted, tears sliding down his face. I don't hate them. I was wrong. I miss them. I don't want to forget. I want them back. Kota started crying. All his pent-up sadness, which he'd been covering with anger, was now rushing out like water coming from a broken dam. I want them back. Kota cried. Kyoku looked at Kota crying his eyes out, and her anger was replaced by sympathy, regret, and discomfort. Before either of them could do anything, however, Kota suddenly felt a hand patting his head. The two children looked up and saw Izuku standing behind the two of them. Daddy! Kyoku panicked. Her and the crying Kota did not look good for her. I can explain. It's okay, Izuku said in the most soothing voice he could. I heard most of it. You two were very loud. You woke up basically everyone except Kiba. Oh. Kyoku blushed with embarrassment. She thought she was being sneaky, but her emotional side got the best of her. I'm not mad, but we will be talking about this tomorrow, okay, Izuku said. For now, Kyoku, please go to bed, I'll deal with Kota. Oh, okay. Kyoku said quietly, before making her way out of the kitchen. With that, Izuku put all his attention towards Kota. It's okay, let it all out. It's always safe to cry here. That was all Kota needed to hear. He cried and cried and cried while Izuku kneeled down and patted him on the back to try and comfort him. After a few minutes had passed, Kota's crying began to slow. I miss them. Kota admitted. I know, Izuku told him. I said all those bad things about them. I didn't. I know, Izuku said. We all say stupid things when we're angry. It's okay. No one is mad at you. The crying and comforting continued for quite some time, until Kota was quite frankly too physically and emotionally exhausted to keep going on. Once Kota tuckered himself out, Izuku took him and laid him in bed. The next morning, when Kota woke up, he was immediately met with warmth. Something or someone was next to him. He opened his eyes and was immediately met by the visor of K. You're awake! K exclaimed excitedly. Huh? Kota was confused by her sudden closeness. We were worried about you. You cried a whole lot and we were worried, and so we watched you to make sure you were okay. K explained almost too quickly for Kota to understand her. We? Kota asked. K nodded and moved out of the way, revealing that Izuku was sleeping in his chair behind her, with Iri and Kyoku on his lap. And Sanson's on the ceiling. Pointed up. Sanson came down and formed her face right in front of Kota's face. Sanson greeted him. Kota sat still, stunned for a moment. He was kind of a mess emotionally, and so he couldn't help but feel thankful for these people, who, he had only met a few days ago, were so concerned for his safety. Thanks, Kota said, blushing in embarrassment for crying in front of a bunch of people. You're welcome, K said, smiling brightly. All the noise in front of him quickly roused Izuku from his slumber. Huh? Oh. Kota, you're awake. Izuku quickly jolted awake, waking up the two sleeping children on his knees. Daddy? Kyoku slowly opened her eyes. Izuku? Iri did the same. Oh, it looks like everyone's awake now, Izuku said. Could you guys please check on Kiba and Fu, make sure Kiba didn't break anything in her sleep again or that Fu didn't get blood anywhere besides the sheets? Oh, and then after that could you set the table so I can cook breakfast? I'm thinking American-style pancakes. The children nodded, and some, quirkier than others, moved out of the room to do their assigned task, leaving Izuku alone with Kota. Are you okay? Izuku asked him gently. Sorry if they overwhelmed you, they were really worried about it. Especially. It's fine. I'm okay. Kota muttered quietly. There was a moment of silence between them, as Izuku didn't quite know what to say next with how Kota was right now. Thank you. Kota unexpectedly apologized. For what? Izuku looked at him in confusion. For all the stuff you did. And said. Kota explained to him. And for letting me cry like that. Oh, it's fine. Izuku smiled at him. My job is to help kids in need. And, you need help, so I helped you. Kota just nodded. Ring ring. Ring ring. Izuku looked at his desk, and his phone was vibrating along its surface. He moved out of his chair and picked it up. Hello? Izuku answered. Kota watched as Izuku talked with an unknown person on the phone for a while. Oh. Okay. In a few hours. Alright. I'll make some breakfast for him then. Do you want any? Oh, that's okay. He'll be ready by the time you get here. Okay. No. It was no issue. He's a very nice boy. He was just a bit confused. Some things happened. Everything is okay. Alright. Bye. Izuku hung up the phone. He turned to Kota. That was Mandalay. She and the pussycats are coming in a few hours to pick you up. Kota's mood immediately worsened. Oh. Izuku walked up to him and rustled his hair and gave him an encouraging smile. You're always welcome here. If you want to see us, just ask the pussycats. Kota nodded, seemingly slightly less upset than before. Okay, why don't you sit down with the other kids and I'll make breakfast? Izuku asked. The boy nodded immediately. If the rest of his cooking was as good as the soup he made, then he would be in for a treat. A few hours later, Izuku, Kota, and the kids stood outside of the apartment building, while the pussycats van, which they refused to call the Pussy Mobile, rolled up in front of them. And then the pussycats came out. Rock on with these sparkling gazes. We've come to lend a paw and help. Coming out of nowhere. Stingingly cute and cat-like. Wild, wild pussycats. All the pussycats shouted their signature motto while doing their signature poses, despite being in their civilian clothes. And the reactions varied. Izuku, Kiba, and Sansan all had stars in their eyes. Oh wow. The wild pussycats, signature motto. Right in front of me. Izuku geeked out. That motto. Those poses. I must come up with some of my own. Kiba said. Goo. Sansan was always a fan of flashing and energetic movements, so this was right up her alley. Kyaku and Fu were overall less amused. Great, I know what Kiba's going to make me practice for the next week. He groaned internally. These are pro heroes? Kyaku expected them to be a bit more serious. Eri didn't know what to think about that, she was just confused. Kota was in the same camp Fu and Kyaku were in, that despite having several changes in opinion and changes in the way he looked at the world, that still seemed just as lame as ever. However, before he could show his embarrassment, Mandalay broke formation and wrapped him up in a hug. Kota, I can't believe you did that. We were so worried about you. The heroine embraced the child, nearly smothering him. I know, I'm sorry. Kota apologized while trying his best to push her away from him. This surprised Mandalay slightly. Ever since Kota had come to them had been stubborn and difficult. This was the first time she had ever heard him apologize for anything. After thoroughly checking to make sure Kota was completely unharmed, Mandalay moved on, allowing the other pussycats to fuss over the boy, much to his chagrin. Mandalay walked up to Izuku and gave a grateful bow. Thank you for finding and taking care of him. If he had died before we found him, I would have never been able to forgive myself. No, it's fine. I just did the right thing. He was very well behaved, Izuku said, trying to keep his composure and failing. Really? Asked Mandalay, not buying that Kota had been well behaved for a bunch of strangers he'd just met. Well, he was a little. Izuku tried to find a way to phrase it. Mean? Kyoku said. Stubborn? Fu added. Difficult. Izuku finished. But that was just because of ... Well, you know. He's had a rough time, but he's a good kid. I hope you don't punish him too harshly. Well, I think almost dying in the rain is enough punishment for the moment. Mandalay decided. Kota breathed a sigh of relief. But don't think you're not going to get a very stern talking to when we get home. Mandalay shouted out loud. Kota made a loud groan. Mandalay turned her attention back to Izuku. By the way, I never asked for your names. Oh right, Izuku blushed at forgetting something so simple. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Kiba Midoriya. Kiba said proudly. Fu Midoriya, Fu said in his typical monotone. Sansan Midoriya. Sansan said while she constantly moved around and looked at the pussycats. Midoriya. Nice to meet Naya. Snickered at her own pun. Kyoku Midoriya. Kyoku said from behind Izuku's leg. Iri Midoriya. Iri introduced herself. Hi. Oh well, aren't these just the cutest little kittens? Pixie Bob said. Are these all your younger siblings? Mandalay asked Izuku. Izuku laughed nervously. Well, you see, he's our dad. K explained. Huh? All the pussycats went wide-eyed and looked at Izuku in confusion, hoping for an explanation to that very strange claim. It apostrophes ... A very bizarre, complicated, and long story that I will probably have to keep explaining to people for the rest of my life. Izuku sighed. He was going to need to find a better way to explain all this. But let's just say I adopted them all due to some rather strange circumstances. Ah. I get it. Ragdoll said. I still have a lot of questions, but I'll hold my tongue for now. Pixie Bob said. Mandalay, we have to go. We still have to report for work within the hour. Tiger reminded them. Right. Mandalay frowned. Unfortunately, due to their job, they didn't always have time to watch Kota, which is how he managed to run away in the first place. She looked at Izuku, and then suddenly she got an idea. Midoriya, I know you've already done so much for us already, but can I ask you something? Mandalay asked him. Oh, of course. I'd be honored. Izuku jittered. We're rather busy sometimes, and we don't always have time to look after Kota. Would you mind babysitting him from time to time? Mandalay pleaded. You seem to be a good influence, and he could use some friends. Izuku smiled. Why yes. I'd be more than happy to. He's more than welcome here. Although we are moving soon, but it's not too far away from the city. Actually, I think it might be closer to you than here. Thank you. I am really grateful. Mandalay said sincerely. Kota. It looks like you'll be staying here for a little bit longer. Yay, we get to see Kota more. Cheered, Sansan joining in her celebration. Well, it seems we shall be friends from this point on. Consider it an honor. Kiba told Kota. Welcome to the Damaged Children Club, Fu told him. Is he going to be our friend? Iri asked, receiving a nod from Izuku. Oh. Okay. All the kids looked at Kyoku, the one who had the biggest problem with outsiders. HMPH. It's fine as long as he stops being mean. Kyoku turned her head away. I promise, and thanks. Kota also looked